presentation. Good morning, Shirley Allen with Affinity, and we'll begin our presentation for today regarding the NMLS prep crash course, the one that we use to pass the exam the first time, and most of our students actually do that. Thank you guys for joining me this morning. Again, I'm Shirley Allen with Affinity. We have our Facebook study group, which is the NMLS exam study group, and the website www.mlotrainingacademy.com. Our courses are approved by the NMLS. This recording is to help people pass their exam. So it's going to be very specific, starting with the beginning. Some of the things you guys may already know, and that's great, but I'm going to go through those things anyway, just in case you miss something and you may be getting a 74 instead of a 75, or just getting really close. So hopefully if there is something that you actually missed, you'll see it here today, and that'll make a difference in your testing scores. So I'm going to start at the very beginning regarding the NMLS steps that you need in order to become a licensed mortgage loan originator. Step one is to get an NMLS number. It's a unique identifier. We refer to it as our NMLS number, but on the exam, they're going to refer to it as your unique identifier. So make sure you know the exact name for your NMLS number. The second step is to complete your 20-hour NMLS pre-license course, 20 hours. And we offered it as a 5-day, 4-hour-a-day course and a 10-day, 2-hour-a-day course if you took it with Affinity. Once you take and pass that course, most of our students took the webinar that we're doing today, which is an exam prep course. But because it's not mandated by the NMLS, you don't have to take it. It's required in order to help you pass the test. The next thing, once you pass that exam, or once you finish that course, is to schedule your exam. The exam that you take is called a national exam with UST component. UST standing for the Uniform State Test. They took all of the content and put it into one test called a UST, so that every state would be uniform. Everyone would have to take the same exact test in order to pass. So there wouldn't be a test for California anymore, wouldn't be a test for Arizona anymore, not a test for Texas anymore. It's the uniform content that has been added to the national exam to make sure that everyone in every state knows what the other requirements are going to be in order to pass the national test. After all of this is done and you've passed the test, that's actually when things start, believe it or not. That's when you start the individual application. The application is called the MU4. Let me just tell you that everything you will see pretty much on my screen that's in red, even though I'm going through it and explaining everything to you, is actually a test question. On the test, I will ask you things like how many hours do you have to complete? What's the national exam? What does UST stand for? Uniform State Test Component. What is the MU4? The MU4 is considered the individual application. It's where you're just really getting started. And then what else do you have to do? Item number 5 says you have to submit your fingerprints, which they refer to as the live scan, and you also have to pay for your credit report. And all of those things will be done online as you're going through that MU4. Basically, you sit down with your ID and your information, anything that's happened, the questions that they're going to be asking you regarding your history for the fingerprinting. All of that stuff is done online, the live scan. If you have anything to explain or to talk about that happened regarding something in your history, you should have it right there with you. And then they'll take you out to schedule your fingerprinting. It has to be done by the NMLS. And then they'll bring you back in to go ahead and look at your credit report. Most people worry about the credit report, but they're not looking for the normal things that we'll see on a FICO score. They're looking for things that have to do with government loans and big expenses that you might have taken out and didn't repay. So that's the first 6 things regarding getting started here. Next thing, everyone knows we must pass the test with a score of 75% or higher. These are test questions. There is a required 30-day waiting period before retaking a failed test. After the third test without passing, the waiting period then becomes 6 months. So we want to avoid that if we can. In order to keep your license current, you must take 8 hours of continuing education every year, no later than December 31st. And that should be an easy day to remember because that's New Year's Eve. The renewal period starts between November 1st and ends on December 31st. Everyone's license expires each year on November 31st, 12/31, unless you take 8 hours of continuing education and pay your fee. That's the test question. And that's the question, that's the way that NMLS wants you to answer that question. There will be 2 answers there. One that says December 31st, and another one that'll say December 31st, unless you take continuing education and pay your fee. That's the most correct answer. So NMLS test is a little bit tricky, and they're always looking for the most complete answers. Even though there could be 2 answers that seem correct, you need to answer the one that's most correct. The test is 100% computerized. You will know when you complete the exam if you passed. You should take only your driver's license or state or federal photo ID in with you. You will be given a regular math calculator, a whiteboard and pen, and a locker key. The test did change in April of this year to 120 multiple choice questions, and 115 will be scored. There used to be 125 questions. If you guys, some of you may have taken it in the past. They lowered the question, but they raised the level of expectation in terms of the scores that you have to make on each individual section. So it looks like it might have made it easier, but actually made it a little bit more difficult. There are 5 unscored questions now instead of 10. It's still $110. So you want to take it the first time only and pay $110 because every time you take it, it's $110. The time frame to take it is 190 minutes, which is like 3.1 hours they give you to complete your exam. We're going to start here with the things to remember in case some of these were the areas that some of you may not have remembered on your exam when you took it. So this is really basic today, just going back over everything that I think you should know. And at the end, I will send you post-study materials that will review and go over all of the things that we actually covered today. So you'll have documents in your hand after this is over to review. And the things to remember, if an application for credit is denied based on the appraisal under ECOA, Regulation B says the borrower has 90 days to request a copy and the lender has 30 days to deliver. Understand they're saying if the application is denied for credit based on the appraisal, not based on credit score or other things, based on the appraisal, ECOA, the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, also known as Regulation B, and we said B because they have to be equal, just to help you remember that ECOA is Regulation B. It really deals with credit and people being denied credit on appraisals and other things. But one thing students can't make the connection with is that ECOA also deals with the appraisal. So make yourself a note there because that's kind of a distant connection, but it is a law that deals with equal credit when granting credit for things that people want to purchase, like cars and boats and furniture and things of that nature. ECOA governs that law, but it also deals with the appraisal. Under ECOA, the consumer has the right to receive a copy of the appraisal within 3 business days. So make yourself a note of that because that shows up on the test And a lot of students says, well, I didn't know E4 had anything to actually do with the appraisal. Well, it does. If the application gets approved, then the consumer has the right to get a copy of that appraisal within 3 business days. But if it's denied based on the appraisal, then the borrower has 90 days to request a copy and the lender has 30 days to deliver. That is part of the Equal Credit Opportunity Act. You need to know that. It's also known as Regulation B, saying that the lenders or what we call the regulators have to be equal. If that helps you remember, it's Reg B. Reg C is HMDA. HMDA is a law where you can see whether the regulations or regulators are being discriminatory against any class of people. Regulation C is HMDA, Home Mortgage Disclosure Act. It allows you to see where any discrimination may be taking place. Regulation X is RESPA, Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act. It deals with closing costs, loan closing, doc signing, loan consummation. All those things mean the same. Regulation X, we just call it REXPA to remember that is Reg X. Then we had Reg Z, which is TILA, Truth in Lending or Truth in Lending Act. We had a lot of fun with it in our office. We always called it TILA the Godzilla because it's something really big. Most of the other laws, once you get past TILA and RESPA, most of them will be a part of Truth in Lending, meaning they've been added into the Truth in Lending Act, making it a very, very large act. HIPAA, HPA, HIPAA talks about PMI. It's insurance. It's a Homeowners Protection Act. It basically deals with when the insurance on the property can or cannot be taken off. PMI, Homeowners Protection Act. And we'll talk about all of these individually as we go through today. And then we have SAFE Act. The SAFE Act is a Secure and Fair Enforcement Act. It's not considered the Safe and Fair Enforcement Act, so don't get tricked right there. It's the Secure and Fair Enforcement Act. It's under HERA, Housing and Economic Recovery Act, also known as the SAFE Act of 2008. HERA, Housing Economic Recovery Act. And we're going to talk about each of those individually. FACRA, Fair Credit Reporting Act, is also known as Reg D. Fair Credit Reporting Act governs the 3 credit reporting agencies called the CRAs, Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian. And then we have the FACT Act, FACTA, Fair and Accurate Credit Transactions. It comes under TILA. They're all been added into TILA. It basically deals with identity theft and proven identity. Then we have the AFBA, ABA affiliate business arrangement. And the fact that it's 1% and not 10% is what you need to remember. An affiliate business arrangement is if you're doing a loan for somebody as an MLO, and then that person asks you to do some type of additional service. For example, you're getting them approved for their loan as their MLO, and then they buy the house, it gets approved, and they said something like, well, we're gonna put carpet in that new house, and my mom and I own a carpet company, so could you guys assist us? Well, if you as the MLO own 1% of that carpet company with your mom or another person, then you have to disclose it. It's just a disclosure that says, yeah, I'm helping you get a house, but I'm also helping you get something else for which you're gonna be paying me for. The Civil Rights Act has to do with race. Everything that has to do with race will come under the Civil Rights Act. So whenever you see some question that says, according to the Civil Rights Act, they're almost always going to be talking about race. The escrow account is an impound account. The impound account can be also called a reserve account, escrow, or impound. We're going to start this morning off with the federal mortgage related laws. We're going to have a few breaks throughout the day. Even though I'm recording it, I'll figure out how I can stop it and have the person that's going to put it together for me just go ahead and put it back together regarding the breaks and things of that nature. If you have some information regarding the chat, you can just type your information there. If you have something, that question that you would like to ask me, you will be able to post it in the chat. So we're going to be getting started here in just a second regarding the federal mortgage related laws. Hold for 1 second. Basically, we're going to start with the Consumer Protection Bureau, the CFPB, and the purpose to promote financial stability through accountability and transparency. It was created by the Dodd-Frank Act and the Consumer Finance Protection Act and combined rulemaking authority for all of these entities. What I'm really saying is that prior to the meltdown, the mortgage meltdown in 2008, these were entities that were involved in the mortgage business. The OCC, the OTS, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, the Federal Reserve, National Credit Union, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, and the Federal Trade Commission. All of them had their hands in the mortgage business when it crashed. So, but when the CFPB came in, they took away all of the authority from all of these entities that no longer have a hand in the mortgage industry. What you need to know for the exam are the two that they did not take them from. So I just need you to go ahead and make a note. You guys need to have a notepad somewhere to make a note on some of the things that I'm going to give you today that you may know or you may not know. But they took the authority away from all of these people and they left it with two. They left the Department of Commerce, which is a test question, and the Fair Housing Act. Department of Commerce and Fair Housing. They were the only two entities involved in the mortgage industry that were able to remain autonomous after the CFPB came in. And I know there are two test questions that they ask about this because they go randomly through and ask so many questions, which are the same thing. But as you guys know that, some of you guys have taken a test, they'll ask them in a slightly different way to try to make sure you don't get it correct. So the only two agencies that escaped, I would say, the wrath of the CFPB was the Department of Commerce and the Fair Housing Act. Basically, we're going to talk about the purpose of these laws that you need to know. Not only will we talk about the purpose of laws like RESPA and TILA, you need to know what they do, but you also need to know how they work together with each other, because sometimes the students were not able to put that together. So the purpose of RESPA is to help consumers become better shoppers for settlement services. RESPA covers a 1 to 4 unit residential property owner occupied. It does not cover all cash sales, rental property of more than 4 units, commercial property and property of 25 acres or more, and any violation of RESPA could result in a fine of up to $10,000 and or imprisonment up to 1 year. Remember, guys, the things in red are the things that they're going to be on your exam. On your exams, you want to pay specific attention to those, and then I'll try to be very detailed when I explain them to you as we go through. Because most of you on here have either taken the 20 hours or taken the test maybe once or twice, and you are somewhat familiar with some of these things. I don't think I have anyone on this class that have not even taken the 20 hours. You're either here to pass the exam, now taking the exam prep course, or you've taken the exam a couple of times and you didn't pass. So I invited you to join this webinar as well. The exam basically deals with 4 sections of RESPA. Section 6, I think section 6 is a more involved section that the exam deals with. It has to do with the mortgage servicers. The mortgage servicers are the people that are hired by the banks to service the loans. Just because a bank makes a loan doesn't mean it wants to service it, meaning it doesn't want to do the monthly collection of the principal, interest, tax, insurance, and things of that nature. So that's what the servicers do. They're designed to address the obligations to correct errors and work with home buyers if the servicers are not making payments on time. For example, if there's something wrong with your payment or the servicers didn't pay the taxes or the insurance, that would be a violation of RESPA Section 6. Section 8 is about kickbacks, fee splitting, and unearned fees. It prohibits giving or accepting a fee, a kickback, or a thing of value in exchange for referrals of settlement service business. It may allow you to take a mug or a pen or something of that nature, but you have to govern yourself as it relates to a thing of value and whether or not you're taking a kickback. One of the things that I know on the exam and the exam questions, when you're talking about someone giving and accepting something for a referral, it's almost always a violation. So read it very carefully. Sometimes they talk about people thinking about doing certain things, taking certain items for promotional activities or advertising, but they don't actually do it. So when you're reading through the NMLS stuff, read carefully to see maybe they talked about in exchange for a referral, if we got together and we did this and we did that, but it never actually happened. So you have to read the question because that would not be a violation unless that activity actually happened. I'm just throwing that in there because I see it in a lot of the questions. In Section 8 also prohibits fee splitting and receiving unearned fees. Typically what it's saying here is that you're not allowed to split your commission with an unlicensed person. That would be fee splitting. If 2 licensed MLOs got together and did a loan and made a decision on how they wanted to do the split, that would be perfectly fine. But you can't split your commission because your brother gave you a referral and you were able to close a loan on that referral, got a commission. Now your brother deserves half of that. That is prohibited. Unearned fees, that part basically takes us back to when we were dealing with loan modifications. During that time when we couldn't get any real estate, we went to an area of almost 3 years where the only way we could make any money was by doing short sales and loan mods. And when we were doing certain things like that, especially the loan mods, we were getting paid up front. So the law came out and they considered that an unearned fee. So there's a law against taking money up front for services that you have not completed 100%. Section 9 deals with title insurance. Under RESPA, it is illegal for a property seller to require the buyer to use a particular title insurance company, either directly or indirectly as a condition of the sale. That used to be the end of it. You would be charged 3 times the amount that you would make them pay for the insurance, if the title insurance, if you force them to go with an agency that the seller chose. What they added onto that, they said, unless the seller pays for the title insurance and all other title related fees. So that was an addendum to Section 9. Typically it says you cannot force the borrower to use a particular title company. And if you do, they would have to pay 3 times the amount, which they refer to as treble damages. They have added on to that and said, okay, if the seller agrees to pay for all the title insurance and all the other title related fees, then they can make you use a title company of their choice. Section 9 allows the buyers to sue for an amount equal to 3 times, again, the treble damages that will be made for the title insurance if that situation was not was agreed upon by both parties. Section 10 basically deals with escrow. How we deal with escrow now is a little differently than it used to be back in the day. Your loan will close and you would pay the first 6 months into your escrow account. Escrow account is the place that holds the taxes and insurance. Section 10 sets limits on the amount that the lender can require a borrower to put into an escrow account for the purpose of paying taxes, hazard insurance, and other related charges. So each month, the lender may require the borrower to pay into the escrow account no more than 1/12 of an annual disbursement. So what they're saying is that you can pay it monthly now. In some instances, the lenders will allow you to put in an additional 2 months into the escrow, just in case something happens during the year. And they call that a cushion. That is the actual terminology on the exam. They will ask you, what is a respite cushion? You need to know that's 2 months of escrow payments that the lenders may allow the borrowers to put into escrow. It is also referred to as 1/6 the annual amount. It requires an annual escrow analysis. Remember, the question will say, how often is an annual escrow analysis conducted? Some people said they didn't get that. It says, how often is an annual escrow analysis conducted? That should have given you a hint, that word annual. And the answer is once a year. If there is any overage, you have to return it more than $50 to the consumer unless the consumer is delinquent. We're gonna go through this little quiz here, then I'm gonna give you guys your first break. What I'm going to ask you guys to do is just post your answers in the chat. If you are participating, post your answers in the chat. Question number 1 here is, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau was created by A, Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act, B, Federal Home Loan Bank Act, C, National Housing Act, and D, Federal Reserve. I see a couple of people that are posting in the chat. So post in the chat if you know it, or if you want to participate. Thank you very much. And then we can move to the next question. Thank you, Oscar. Thank you, King. Thank you, Wayne. Thank you, those that are posting in the chat. Thank you very much. The answer is Wall Street. I don't know why I didn't underline that. Section 2, under RESPR, what section is illegal for a property seller to require the buyer to use a particular title insurance company directly or indirectly as a condition of the sale? Go ahead and post in the chat. I see one chat post there. That could have been from the first one. Okay. Section. Couple of people have not posted. Yeah, there you guys seem to get it. That's C, RESPR section 9. My computer was supposed to actually highlight those, but I think that's when I'm doing the 20 hours, because throughout the webinar, the questions are only 1 or 2 questions at the end of the chapter. The other one had like 10 questions at the end. So perhaps that's why those weren't highlighted, but I can give you the right answers. Let's talk about the items necessary in order to make a credit decision. And after this point, we may be able to take a quick break, like 10 minutes, because this isn't an 8-hour class. It's not that long. The initial 6 items of information necessary for the creditor to make a credit decision. This means, what do we put on the 1003? The Uniform Residential Loan Application is called a 1003, Form 1003. It's Fannie Mae's Form 1003, but I think it's Freddie's Form 65. Same form we use to take the information for an application. It has the names of the borrower, the social security number for each borrower, gross monthly income of the borrowers, the loan amount being sought, the address of the subject property. This one you could put TBD or UNK if you don't already have the property and you're looking for it. What you cannot put is N/A. So the test on the question is an example of what can you put in item number 5 if you don't have the property, and it gives you a list of things. And NA is the one from that list that you cannot put. And you can put the estimate of the property value. You already kind of know that because you have the calculator and you have their income and things of that nature. And once a complete application is obtained, this is where things start. Borrowers have indicated his or her intent to proceed. This is when we start giving what we call the initial disclosures. The initial disclosures have to be provided at this point because the loan application has been completed and submitted to the lender. The only reason it would not have to be provided is if the applicant withdraws the application or the lender turns down the loan before the 3 business day waiting period. But you got to look at that. Someone has a question for me in the chat. No, I think someone was just answering something. Okay, but if you do have a question for me, you can post it there. So again, the only time we don't end up with the initial disclosures is if the applicant withdraws the application or the lender turns down the loan before the 3 business days. Let's go through RESPA, and then I'll give you the break at the end here. RESPA deals with timing. That's what you got to know regarding the RESPA questions. RESPA deals with timing. Timing of what? It deals with the timing of what disclosures are required to be given to the lender. RESPA tells you when it has to be done and also what disclosure they're talking about. So the time frame becomes very important. And almost every time frame that you're going to encounter when talking about something on the exam is within 3 business days. That's almost kind of the standard answer. There's one time that it comes back that's required 4 business days, and it has something to do with the revised loan document. But for the most part, every question and that has to do with the time frame regarding disclosures being given is going to be added within 3 business days. The home loan toolkit, it used to be called a Know Before You Owe booklet. It's a booklet created by HUD. It's a special information booklet for purchases only. RESPA says you have to get it added within 3 business days, excuse me, of the application. Then we have the loan estimate. Those things in red are tiller documents, but RESPA controls when you give them out. The loan estimate is a tiller document. RESPA says at or within 3 business days of the application, you must give the loan estimate. It delivered to the borrower or placed in the mail. It must be delivered to the borrower within 3 business days of the loan application or placed in the mail. Once it's been placed in the mail, it is considered to have been delivered. If the mailbox blows up, it's not your fault. It was delivered, placed in the mail. The mortgage service and disclosure statement. Sometimes it gets confused with the transfer statement of the mortgage. They're not one and the same. The mortgage service and disclosure statement is the lender's intention. It's a RESPA document. The lenders give their intention. Make a note of that. Added within 3 business days of a completed application, they'll let you know whether they want to keep this loan in-house and service it. Remember, servicing is collecting the taxes and insurance and notifying the borrower when they're late and any type of issue that the borrower may have with their payments being made would come under Section 6 servicing of RESPA. So within 3 business days, the lender will let you know whether or not they are going to keep it or they're going to send it to a third-party person to service that loan. Also added within 3 business days of the application, you must give your buyer a list of HUD-approved home counselors. RESPA said they need a list added within 3 business days because they need to do some first-time home buyer counseling or whatever, but they must get that list. RESPA says before settlement, if you're doing business with them, the way I talked about earlier, you're going to sell them the house, but you're also going to be responsible for putting the carpet or drapes in the house. If you're doing something like that, then you must have a disclosure. That disclosure is called an affiliate business arrangement, AFBA disclosure. And if you're making money from that company, if you get more than 1% ownership in that company that's doing the extra work, like the carpet or the drapes, you have to disclose it. 1%, not 10. Many students have gotten confused because they thought, well, it couldn't mean 1%. That's hardly anything. And that's exactly what they mean, 1%. A lot of those questions are designed to confuse you. Before settlement, RESPA says you have to give them the closing disclosure 3 days prior to consummation. It's a TILA requirement. It's a TILA document. Most students are confusing the time in which you give a completed loan estimate and the time you get a completed closing disclosure. They're not the same questions. A completed loan estimate has to be provided to the consumer within 3 business days of a completed application being given to the lender. That's the loan estimate. The closing disclosure has to be provided 3 days before the loan closes, prior to consummation, loan closing, doc signing, whatever they want to call it. It all means the same. So I've seen a lot of confusion regarding those two things. When the loan estimate must be delivered, when the closing disclosure get delivered. There are 3, and people are just putting 3 business days, 3 business days. That's not the complete answer. The loan estimate 3 business days after the application has been provided to the lender. The closing disclosure 3 business days prior to the loan closing. So there are 2 different time frames. So you got to know that, because I've seen a lot of errors regarding that. Also, at settlement, you get the final closing disclosure, also a TILA document. That means that everyone has agreed upon the figures. Then initial escrow statement has to be given. It could be given right there, or it could be sent out in the mail. RESPA says you got 45 days to send out the escrow statement. After closing or after settlement, there's an annual escrow statement. RESPA section 10 will send that out. RESPA says they can send that out after the loan closes. The service and transfer statement now comes out after the loan closes because the lender has made a decision. They made a decision to transfer the loan. So once they make that decision to transfer the loan, it's a goodbye letter. They got 15 days to notify the consumer, and there won't be any penalties on that consumer for 60 days if they know where their service has been transferred. So back to looking at the mortgage service and disclosure statement at within 3 business days, that's when they indicate to the consumer that we may not keep it. We may send it out to someone else. But after settlement, after loan actually closed, that's when the lenders made the decision that they actually was not going to keep it. So they have to give a 15-day notice and a 60-day grace period. They send out a letter. They call it a goodbye letter. Goodbye, this is ABC servicing, this is ABC Bank. We're going to transfer the servicing of your loan. A lot of students get mixed up right here because the questions look similar. They are not selling the loan. So read them carefully. They're selling the servicing of the loan. And it's easy to select the wrong thing. Did Wells Fargo sold the bank, sold the loan to Chase? Well, no, they sold the servicing of the loan. So make sure when you're going through the test, you're reading everything carefully. Read it twice. Also, there is no fee that can be accepted other than the fee for the credit report before you deliver them that loan estimate. You cannot collect any money from your client. And there are some terms on the loan estimate that must be available for 10 business days. You have to read the loan estimate and see which ones they are. Some of those things do expire. The closing disclosure must contain the actual terms and costs of the transaction. The creditor is responsible for giving this statement to the borrower. The creditor, meaning the bank, lender, creditor, all means the same thing. The settlement agent or title agent is responsible for giving these documents to the seller. Initial closing disclosures must be delivered to the borrower within 3 business days prior to loan consummation, loan closing, doc signing. A final disclosure is delivered at loan closing. You got to remember those terms. And if there is a change to the closing disclosure due to a valid change in circumstance, the borrower receives a new 3-day waiting period. That's called redisclosure. Just make yourself a quick note that shows redisclosure equals 3 business days. You have, if something changes, for example, the changes to the certain things here, the APR, the loan product, or they add a prepayment penalty, those things require redisclosure. Redisclosure is an additional 3 business day waiting period for the client. 1/8% could be written 0.125, 1/4% could be written 0.25. The point here is that the CFPB says traditional fixed rate mortgage is a regular transaction. 30-year fixed rate traditional mortgage, that's the only thing it considers as a regular transaction. Anything other than a 30-year fixed rate mortgage is considered an irregular transaction. It could be a 15-year, a 10-year, it could be an ARM, whatever it is. The CFPB has designated that it is not a traditional mortgage unless it is a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. So you have some questions regarding that. A change in the loan product would require a valid change in circumstance. They decided they wanted a 15-year loan instead of a 30 years. That's a legitimate reason to change. And an addition of a prepayment penalty. That's a reason to change. I am going to see how I can pause the recording for a minute. I'm going to pause it. Okay. We left off talking about the valid change in circumstances. If you guys have any questions about that, you can post it in the chat. But these are the reasons where there could be a change in circumstances and a new closing disclosure would be given to the borrower. And the point you got to remember is what would necessitate a change. The change in the APR, change in the loan product, addition of a prepayment penalty. Let's see, was there anything else? No. Okay, we're gonna talk a little bit about TILA and understanding TILA, truth in lending. TILA deals with credit, APR, and advertising of consumer loans. It requires a lender to disclose the complete cost of credit to consumer loan applicants. The complete cost of credit would be, for example, say you bought a home for $450,000, you're going to amortize it for 30 years at $500 a month. You have to do the math and go all the way out there and let your client know that at the end of 30 years, this is what this house is going to cost you, like $1 million or whatever. That's considered the complete cost of credit. So when you're taking a loan application and getting their information regarding their income and expenses and things of that nature, you know the amount that they're going to be maybe pre-qualified for, you could go ahead and do that and go ahead and show them an amortization schedule actually on your laptop or your phone. So just so that they understand that it's going to be more money because it's been the interest over the period of 30 years. TILA is a law that requires the lender to disclose the APR, annual percentage rate. That's the law that requires it. TILA applies to transactions that are payable by written agreement with more than 4 installments. Remember, everything in red is a test question. More than 4. You'll see all kinds of examples. They'll say 4, 3, 2, whatever. The answer to that question is more than 4 installments. Why didn't they say 5 or why didn't they say 6? We don't know. It just says more than 4. Remember that. And again, the only fee that may be collected prior to these disclosures are the fee for credit reports. A lot of times we're out there with our clients and, we're going to give you guys more explanation on stuff. And maybe it's a long way to go out there to get the disclosure signed or pick up some things of that nature or get the check for the credit. They're going to have to pay for an appraisal. So oftentimes we'll just say, can I get a post-dated check? No. Can I get you to give me a copy of your credit card? And once the appraisal is done, I'll charge it like that and we don't have to meet again. No. The only fee you can collect before they get the disclosure is the fee for the credit reports. TILA is also the law that established the 3-day right of rescission in certain transactions. In certain transactions, you cannot rescind all transactions and HELOCs and refinances. It only takes one borrower to rescind for the loan to be canceled. So if you and I are doing a refinance together, we decided to do this transaction, and then you're upset with me and you said, I'm not going to do it, then that transaction is dead for me. It only takes one borrower to rescind. A consumer may rescind a credit transaction until midnight of the third business day. So when you're counting off the rescission days, make sure you understand it's Monday and you start the rescission. The first day of rescission is Monday. On Sunday, you decided you didn't want to go through it. Monday is day one. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Thursday is day 3, and they'll be on the test. But then the next one will say Thursday after midnight, at midnight. The most correct answer is Thursday at midnight. So if you were just to choose Thursday, you're wrong. You're going to get a wrong answer. So remember that it's midnight, third business day, and that the rescission starts the day after the documents get signed. And then if there's any money that's been paid out on that refinance, then the lenders have 20 days to return it. Everything in red is a test question. Borrowers have 20 days, 20 calendar days to return it, not business days. And any borrower on the deal got to receive 2 copies of a notice of a right to rescind. If that doesn't happen, then that can be an extended rescission period up to 3 years. Tiller record keeping. This is tricky for the students, so I try to make sure you guys get it. There are other tiller documents that have nothing to do with the mortgage industry. We don't care about them. They are general tiller disclosures. So those disclosures must be kept for 2 years. These are general tiller disclosures that have nothing to do with the mortgage industry. The 2 disclosures on the tiller that do have to do with the mortgage industry is the loan estimate and the closing disclosure. The loan estimate has to be kept for 3 years. The closing disclosure has to be kept for 5 years. But of course, this test is really tricky. They might not say the names of them. And if they don't, they're not talking about them. If they simply say, well, how long are tiller disclosures kept? That is a test question. That answer is 3 years. I'm sorry, that answer is 2 years. If they say, how long is the loan estimate kept, which is a tiller disclosure, 3 years. And how long is a closing disclosure kept? It's a tiller disclosure, 3 years. So generally speaking, they have to call them by their names. All other disclosures are kept 2 years. These 2 with specific names are kept according to their names. The LE, 3 years. The CD, 5 years. Tiller disclosures include the following items. There's a LE, loan estimate, and the CD, closing disclosure. There is a consumer handbook on adjustable rate mortgages. A charm booklet is what they call it. There is a when your home is on the line booklet. That one is for HELOCs, home equity line of credit, and refis. Your home is on the line in these situations because you already have a home and you have some equity and you borrowed that money. You borrowed that equity on the loan. They're just letting you know, if you don't pay it back, you're putting your home on the line for foreclosure. They give you a book letting you know what happens when you borrow money on your home and you don't pay it back. So when you do borrow money on your home from your equity, you're actually putting it out there on the line. So the only 2 loans that you can do that, you have a HELOC, a home equity line of credit, or you're refinancing and you have equity. The notice of a right to rescind, again, all individuals with ownership interest should receive the 2 copies of the right to rescind. Any rate adjustments must be given out at least 60-day notice provided to the consumer before the interest rate can change. If that change in the interest is going to result in a new payment amount. Rate adjustments. The consumer must be given at least 60 days notice before an interest rate can change if that change is going to result in a new payment amount. So make sure you're reading it carefully. An initial rate adjustment disclosure has to be provided 7 to 8 months before the first payment is due at a new rate. So if they do decide to change it, and it's going to amount in a new, it's going to create a new amount, it will be the first time from an ARM will be considered an initial rate adjustment, they have to let them know at least 7 to 8 months that they're going to do that before that first payment at that new rate is started. This is all about TILA, adjustable rate mortgages. TILA requires the disclosures of the APR, annual percentage rate. On the test, they use another word for the APR. They use the effective rate. Make sure you guys are making a note. It means the same thing. So you'll get a couple of questions regarding the APR and another couple of questions regarding what is the effective rate for this particular transaction. It means the same, effective rate and APR. Another word that they use on the exam is interest rate. Actually, two. They'll call, well, three here. You got the interest rate, then they call it a note rate, or it may be referred to as a nominal rate. Make sure you guys know. Another word for the interest rate, the note rate or nominal rate, and sometimes they call the APR rate the effective rate. Another one that was sometimes confusing was the business day. What is the definition of a business day? Specifically, a business day is all calendar days except Sundays and legal public holidays. According to whom? According to TILA. A business day equals all calendar days except Sundays and legal public holidays, according to TILA. There is an exception, though, when you're dealing with one particular document, a document called the loan estimate. There is an exception to this rule, is the loan estimate, which a business day is any day in which the creditor's office is open for business. For example, if a creditor's office are open to the public on Sundays and every Veterans Day, then those are considered that entity's business days. Specifically for people that live in states kind of like California where we are, we have something called supermarket banks. Almost in every supermarket we have out here in California, there's a bank inside of it. That bank operates 7 days a week from 11 to 7. So if you were doing your transaction with the supermarket bank and you have 3 days to return your documents that was signed on Wednesday, Thursday, they were signed on Thursday, and you have the 3-day waiting period to return them, that will be Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. That bank is open for business on Sunday, which means you have to make sure that those documents are returned according to that creditor's office and when it's open for business. Only the very first time the loan estimate gets returned. So you made the time frame. You returned it on Sunday. Everything was good. They reviewed it and they found an error in the calculations. So what that means is it has to get returned back to you so that that can be corrected. So once it's returned back to you to be corrected, that starts an additional 3-day waiting period for the consumer to decide whether they want to go forward with it. That's called redisclosure. An additional 3-day waiting period is called redisclosure. Once that happens, the business day falls back into just what a regular business day is, which is all calendar days except Sundays and legal public holidays, according to TILA. So just make sure you understand that there was an exception the very first time the loan estimate got delivered. Once it was corrected and sent back and the 3-day waiting period started all over again, it falls back into the regular definition of a business day with all other documents. Another thing to note is that the rate lock, I didn't mention it here, but I want to mention it for you. A rate lock is only found on a loan estimate. I know there's a question on the test or something that says, where is the rate lock? If you forget to lock the rate, that could be a problem for your loan. The rate lock is only found on the loan estimate. TILA deals with triggering terms. What's a trigger term about the loan? If an advertisement contains any one of the triggering terms about the loan, then that advertising must include more information. It must include the amount or percentage of the down payment. It must contain the terms of repayment. It must have the annual percentage rate, using that term spelled out in full, or APR, if an ad contains only APR. No additional disclosures are required. Let's just take a look at the two triggering terms, because there'll probably be a couple of questions I'll ask you regarding that. Triggering terms requires disclosure. 20% down, pay only $700 a month, only 360 monthly payments, 30-year financing, and 1% finance charge. Type in the chat what's missing and why would it, you don't have to just explain why it would trigger. If you type in the chat what this ad is missing, then I'll know that you understand the triggering term. The next side, you see a non-triggering term. It says 5% APR loans available here. It says easy monthly payments, financing available, 100% VA financing in terms to fit your budget. I see one person posted in the chat. From the first example, what I'm asking you to post in the chat, why does it trigger? What's missing? Okay, I see only one person in the chat. So let me see. Two. Join in slowly, guys. Angelina, John Rangel, they posted in the chat. Any who else there? Wayne. Okay. It's missing the APR. Thank you, guys. That's real important for you guys to understand the triggering term. Any number like 20%, 700, 360, 30, any number that's in the advertisement, if that number is not the APR, then it's going to trigger. Trigger what? The results. It's going to trigger the rest of the documents that's needed. And the other one, it could have just read 5% APR, and that would have been fine because it does not trigger. Just so you know that section on triggering terms. Let's talk about qualified mortgage. If a lender issues a qualified mortgage, it receives safe harbor, which means the lender's got protection if the borrower goes into foreclosure. It's a way of the government telling the lenders, go ahead, issue this mortgage. We got your back. If they don't pay you, we're not going to let you go into foreclosure. We will bail you out. The qualified mortgage rule essentially creates a new category of mortgages, and it imposes a minimum of some underwriting standards, which are referred to the ATR. Make a note of that, guys. Ability to repay. When this thing broke in 2008, before that, we were doing all kinds of loans. We were just whatever the traffic would allow. We had no responsibility on the part of the loan officer at that time to determine whether our customers had the ability to repay. They just had the ability to have a great FICO score and be alive, and then we could get them a loan. Now, as MLOs, you guys have to deal with the ATR, especially as it relates to qualified mortgages. ATR, ability to repay requirements. That is one of the most prominent clauses in the qualified mortgage rule. And I'm going to go through these for you. In a qualified mortgage, there can be no documentation loans, no NINAs, no CISAs, no CIVAs, no CISAs, no stated income, verified assets, stated income, stated assets, no income, no assets, no DOC. Those loans are not allowed. That's what caused the breakdown in the first place. So everyone applying must go full documentation. I mean, we have to be able to prove and verify everything. It also sets the maximum DTI, debt to income ratio, of 43%, meaning the money that goes out of your household income on the back end for your expenses and things of that nature cannot be more than 43% of your income. They have cap points and fees at 3% and 3 points. That's all you're going to be making on the loan, 3%. A point is 1% of a loan amount. They have capped it off that they are going to have no loan terms over 30 years. Used to be you can get a 40-year loan, and we did a lot of loan mods to 40 years to try to give people the opportunity to get caught up and and keep their homes, but not a qualified mortgage. You cannot be more than 30 years. There can be no interest only loans and no negative amortization loans allowed. Interest only was good for a lot of people that were going to be temporary living where they were. And a lot of service people, like where I live, they just come in this area and take a home and pay interest only because they know this is not the final destination, and they can get a loan like that, just pay interest. Or sometimes we had those option arms where you could make several different payments. And in those type of loans, some of them ended up creating what we call neg am, because the part you weren't paying was actually going onto the back of the loan and increasing the principal. So you cannot have anything like that in the qualified mortgages. We cannot use any teaser rates. The rates that we tell you that we have available must be available. It requires that adjustable rate mortgages, the ARMs, be underwritten to the maximum interest rate that can be charged during the first 5 years of the loan term. Typically, there's a lot of ARMs that were out there, like 225. I know I did a lot of those, fixed for 2 years, and then, variable for 2 years, and then fixed for the 25 years after. 3-1 ARMs, 5-1 ARMs, whatever. The qualified mortgage, it has to be 5 years, fixed for the first 5 years of the loan, and then it can adjust after the 5th year. No prepayment penalties were allowed. Prepayment penalties are prohibited, except for maybe there was some certain fixed rate loan. But for the most part, they were not allowed. If you guys have any questions regarding qualified mortgages, go ahead and post your questions in the chat. I'll be more than happy to address your questions. No, so this is qualified mortgage. They must have the ATR, ability to repay. But we have no docs, no NINAs. Everybody got to go for a doc. The back end can't be more than 43%. You're only going to make 3 points on the loan. The loans have to be 30 years. None over 30 will be permitted. No interest only, no neg am, no teaser rates. And if it's an ARM, the ARM has to be fixed for the first 5 years of the loan and cannot add any prepayment penalties. Is this what makes the loan conforming? Not necessarily. What makes the loan conforming is the amount of the loan in agreement with the secondary market, like Fannie and Freddie. If they're over the certain loan amount, so each community typically has a loan amount assigned to it, county loan amounts. And if the loan amount is higher than the amount that Freddie and Fannie will finance, they will call it a jumbo loan. But if it's within the amounts that Fannie and Freddie will finance, then they're called conforming loans. They conform to the rules of Freddie and Fannie. If they're outside of the rules or the amount specifically of Freddie and Fannie, that's when they are non-conforming. And it basically deals with the loan amount, whether it's a conforming loan or a non-conforming loan. Creditors have to look at certain type of information to determine whether or not the client has the ability to repay. 8 things you have to look at to determine if they have the ability to repay. Take a quick look at those. Okay, we have to establish, again, their ability to repay by looking at their current income or assets, their current employment status, their credit history, the monthly payments of the mortgage monthly payment on any other mortgages they may have simultaneously, a monthly payment for any other mortgage related expenses, any other debts of the borrower, and monthly debt payment compared to their income cannot exceed 43%. This is what you as MLO have to determine for your client, whether or not they have the ability to repay whatever mortgage it is that you're trying to get them approved for. Let's take a look. Put your answers in the chat. I want to know if you got this. Some of you. TILA applies and credit is payable by written agreement in blank installments. Post in the chat. A, B, C, or D. I got 3 people that got it right. Oscar, Michelle, there were a couple others that got it right. It's more than 4, so it'll be 8. I will be number A. How long must the closing disclosure be kept? Please post in the chat. Yep, got it. 5 years. Okay, we're going to talk about ECOA. ECOA deals with discrimination when granting credit. Remember, we started earlier talking a little bit about it, and I put in a little caveat there to let you know ECOA also deals with the appraisal. ECOA deals with fair housing, deals with discrimination in the sales of lease of property. A lot of students were getting ECOA and fair housing confused. They were saying like, well, I thought ECOA dealt with discrimination. I thought fair housing deals with discrimination. They both do in certain ways. ECOA deals with discrimination when granting credit. Fair housing deals with discrimination in the sale and lease of property. So ECOA is a federal law that ensures that all consumers are given an equal chance to obtain credit. Creditors must notify applicants of their lending decision within 30 days of the filing of a complete application. If they are denied, they get what's called an adverse action notice. So a denial is an adverse action notice. ECOA disclosures must be retained for 25 months. Everybody missed that one that I've ever talked to. It just didn't look right, so they picked 24 months. The correct answer is ECOA disclosures, guys, must be kept for 25 months. Civil action could be filed for an ECOA violation for up to 24 months, which is 2 years, if the consumer believes that his rights have been violated. Well, if they can file up to 24 months, then the documents would not be there unless the documents were retained for at least 25 months. That's the caveat to that. According to Regulation B, now, the only correct way to ask about marital status is, are you married, unmarried, or separated? Are you married, unmarried, or separated, which refers to single, divorced, or widowed. On the application, on the exam, is married, or unmarried, or separated. Why? Because ECOA says that's the only way you can refer to marital status anymore, as they try to be equal. ECOA states that the creditor cannot ask the borrower about childbearing or child rearing. You can have 5 kids in your office while they're taking a mortgage application for your client, and you can't say things like, oh my God, it's a 3-bedroom house and you guys already got 5 kids, what's your plans? You just have to ignore it. Any penalties for non-compliance in this area, there's a $10,000 fine for each individual action. Let's talk about the protected classes. Protected classes, we have them under ECOA and we have them under fair housing. The first 5 are always the same. So basically, once you learn this, that the first 5 are the same, then the other ones that you know for fair housing, the difference, you can figure it out. A protected class is a class of individuals that cannot be used as a source of discrimination or denial when approving a credit application. Remember, ECOA has to do with a credit application and the appraisal. Right now, we're talking about the credit application. ECOA has 8 protected classes: sex, race, religion, color, national origin. Then it has age, marital status, and public assistance. Note the ones in red. You're going to come in contact with that more often than not. The first 5 are also protected by Fair Housing Act. The last 3, age, marital status, and public assistance, are only protected by ECOA. What is public assistance? Examples are people getting Social Security income, child support income, alimony, etc. Any type of non-tax income for the purpose of this course is considered to be public assistance. If you're getting your pension from somewhere you used to work, you're on public assistance, things of that nature. ECOA, again, an appraisal. It's still the law that requires the lender to provide the borrower a copy of the appraisal. A borrower must be notified within 3 days of receipt of an application of his or her right to receive the copy of the appraisal. And here we go. If an application is denied based on the appraisal report, the consumer has the right to request the appraisal report that was used within 90 days of the credit decision, and the lender must provide it within 30 days. However, if the application was actually approved, the borrower should receive the appraisal no later than 3 business days prior to the close of a first lien loan. 3 business days based on ECOA. Fair housing. This is another one of the 2 that didn't get taken over by the CFPB. Remember, the Department of Commerce survived and the Fair Housing Act survived. So they don't report to the CFPB, but they do have some laws and regulations. The Fair Housing Act prohibits discrimination against protected classes and the sale or lease of residential property. The Fair Housing Act has 7 protected classes: sex, race, religion, color, national origin, disability, and familial status, dealing with children 18 and under. That's considered familiar status. The first 5 are also protected by ECOA. So once you learn the first 5, you kind of got this. The last 2, your disability and familiar status, those things are only protected by fair housing. If someone has a complaint regarding the Fair Housing Act, they have to submit it to HUD, Housing and Urban Development. They are the ones that come under HUD. They have like 1 year to make any lawsuits or any complaints regarding fair housing. These acts also come under fair housing, and you will end up having to deal with these. There are in the exam a couple of times, asked a couple of different ways. So read it a couple of times before you pick an answer to make sure you understand what they are asking you and what law they're asking you that deals with it. Blockbusting. Blockbusting is also called panic selling. That's another word for blockbusting, in case there's a test question that says, what is another word for blockbusting? Panic selling is trying to induce owners to sell their homes by suggesting that the entire ethnic or racial composition of a neighborhood is changing, with the implication that the property values will decline. Steering. Steering is the channeling of prospective real estate buyers or tenants of a particular neighborhood based on their race, religion, or ethnic background. Things of that nature, like, oh, I've got some houses in this neighborhood. You know, everybody over there speaks Spanish, so you might like it over there. Things of that nature. You're not allowed to say things like that. Redlining basically dealt with what the lenders did. They were refusing to make loans on property located in particular neighborhoods for discriminatory reasons. Back in the day, you could actually go in the bank. You would know what it was about, but that would be a map behind the loan officers and whatever, with a bunch of red lines drawn around certain streets and areas, and nobody kind of knew what it was about. Nobody really asked. Well, it was there to not make loans into low-income neighborhoods based on discriminatory reasons. That's redlining. Blockbusting and steering, those are things that are committed by the MLO and real estate agents. Redlining is committed by the banks and by lenders. I want to take a quick look at these charts. That will give you information on how to remember certain things. Taking a look at those. ECOA is Regulation B. The lenders have to be equal. Deals with sex, race, religion, color, national origin, age, marital status, and receipt of public assistance. On the other hand, Fair Housing Act deals with sex, race, religion, color, and national origin, but it also includes a disability and handicap and the familiar status. So you know who are the protected classes. and what it means as you go through your mortgage training. Okay, let's move to the next one. Homeowners Protection Act, HIPAA. HIPAA is only about the insurance, the PMI. I'm not saying MIP. Make sure you understand PMI. PMI is on conventional loans only. Note here. A conventional loan is a loan that has no government involvement. PMI protects the lender on conventional loans only. It requires the lenders or services to provide disclosures concerning the private mortgage insurance on the residential mortgage transactions. Borrowers want it off. It's an additional amount that's added into the mortgage payment every month. So the borrower may request the cancellation of the PMI when the loan to value is at 80% or they have 20% equity invested in the property. They may say, I want to take this extra mortgage insurance off my monthly note. But the PMI gets automatically canceled at 78% LTV if the borrower is current or if the borrower is at a 22% equity position. That's all HPA is about. Homeowners Protection Act. It's about PMI. PMI is on conventional loans only. It only talks about when the borrower can request that additional insurance come off, when the lender must take that additional insurance off. It's typically on the conventional loan when the borrower puts less than 20% down, then they'll have to put the additional PMI, private mortgage insurance, on the house, but it doesn't protect their stuff. To protect your stuff, you have to go ahead and get a homeowner's declaration policy. PMI just protects it if your loan closed today and then the fire burned it up tomorrow. The PMI is on that house if it's a conventional loan that would, protect you. It's on conventional loans only. Any questions about PMI? You can post them in the chat. But that's the only 2 questions you're going to get. Actually, in this one here is going to result in 4 questions. I want you to be aware. When they ask the question and they ask the question that has to do with LTV, which is loan to value, your answer is going to be 80%. But when they turn the question around and they'll ask you about the equity position. Well, if you only owe 80% and the equity position means you already put 20% in it. And the same thing with when it can be canceled at 78%. If they're talking to you about the LTV, loan to value, then the answer is going to be 78%. But if they're talking to you the opposite way about the equity position, then it's going to be 22%. I've had several students say they missed this because they didn't get it. They didn't get what they were doing when they talked about the equity position. So LTV, 80%, equity position, 20. LTV, at 78%, then the equity position is at 22. So if you add either one of them together, you're going to get 100%. 80-20 is 100%. 78 and 22 is 100%. So they asked the question backwards a couple of ways. So just know, you need to know what they're asking you about, whether they're asking about the LTV or whether they're asking you about the equity position in order to make it through those 4 questions. Because I've heard some of the students say they didn't really get that. So I hope you got it. Okay, so what regulation we have designed to ensure that all consumers are given an equal chance to get credit? What law is that? Post in the chat quickly. Oh my God, we're already at 11. We'll be at 12 for a short, quick lunch break shortly. Okay, one person posted in the chat. Oh, we move more expeditiously if we post. I would appreciate it anyway. See that what's getting through. Thank you guys. Everybody says, somebody said it's B, but it's not B. Somebody says it's C. The law to give a chance to credit has the word credit actually in it. Hint, hint. Equal Credit Opportunity Act, ECOA. Second one, the Fair Housing Act prohibits discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, and. Very few people get this one, so I'm gonna see how you guys do. Post in the chat, A, B, C, or D. I have one brave soul posting, 2. The Fair Housing Act prohibits discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, and. Some people got it, some people didn't. And Gita, you're on. I expected you to get that. The answer is C, based on disability, handicap, familial status, and national origin. That's the difference. That's the additional things. Okay, the answer is C. Okay, I'm only asking a couple of questions through this webinar. Home Mortgage Disclosure Act, HMDA, Regulation C, is designed to identify possible discrimination lending patterns. It's Regulation C. It allows the lenders to see where discrimination may be taking place. This report was changed. It was normally in Section 10 of the 1003 Home Mortgage Disclosure Act. We had to move that information to Section 8 of the 1003, and they call it demographic information. The law requires HMDA, the HMDA law requires the lenders to file reports regarding the ethnicity, race, and sex of all applicants. They call these report LARs, Loan Application Register. And this is the information that you can see is there. It's the same information that was on Section 10 of the 1003 when it was called government monitoring information. It's just that they made the change and decided they wanted it to be called demographic, and they wanted to move it into Section 8 of your 1003 loan application. And these are the same categories that they want more information on, specifically the ethnicity, the race information, sex, male, female, black, whatever. What they actually pointed out was that little section at the bottom and focused on how did you take the application? How did you verify the ethnicity, the sex, or the race of the borrower? They really want to know how that was done. Did you use a surname? Did you get it by visual observation? Did you collect it on a form? So that's the information. That's HMDA information. So remember that. Fair Credit Reporting Act, Regulation B. It's all a part of TILA. Everything now is involved in this is amended onto the TILA law. It's the law that deals with credit reports and credit reporting agencies, Equifax, Experience, TransUnion. According to Regulation B, TILA, consumers have the following 5 rights. The right to an adverse action notice, which is also called a denial letter. The right to a free copy of the consumer credit file or credit report. The right to request a credit score, although the score is not free. They took a lot of people on that question, free credit score, and you think it's in free credit report because you're nervous and you're not reading it. Make sure you read it carefully and see what they're asking about. The right to dispute the incomplete or inaccurate information, the right to limit any pre-screened offers. Any entity that uses a credit report or other type of a consumer report to deny an application for credit insurance or employment must provide the consumer with the name, address, and phone number of the agency that provided that information. So under FACRA, Fair Credit Reporting Act, consumers are entitled to a free copy with an if here of their credit file, not the report. If, number 1, the information resulted in an adverse action or denial. Number 2, if the person was a victim of identity theft with fraud alert. Number 3, if there was inaccurate information as a result of fraud, or that person was on public assistance or unemployed. Remember, we talked about those items that made public assistance. Social Security, pension, alimony, things of that nature. But also if a person is unemployed and that's some information on their credit report, then they could be entitled to a free copy based on the FACRA law, Fair Credit Reporting Act. The credit reporting agencies may not report outdated negative credit information. Negative credit information more than 7 years old, bankruptcies more than 10 years, criminal convictions do not expire, and they must limit access to the credit file to only people with legitimate business needs. You can't just get into people's credit without a legitimate reason. It looks like someone's having problem connecting. I don't know what happened, but you were on there before, so hopefully it connects you again. Fact Act of Factor, again amended to Reg V, which was amended into TILA. It is intended to help consumers fight identity theft. We got red flag rules, section 114 is another name for red flag rules. Identity theft rules. Here's the agency to get a free credit report without any ifs. Once a year, you are allowed to get a free credit report from www.annualcreditreport.com. The fact that requires the following things to happen. Businesses have to truncate your credit and debit card receipts. They cannot print more than 5 digits on those. Consumers are allowed to place fraud alerts, passwords, and credit freezes on their credit reports. And they are required to use certain ways and means that they have to secure and dispose of sensitive consumer information. FACRA requires that you burn or shred that type of information. We're going to talk about more federal regulations. This will probably take us a while until we actually get right up until like 12 o'clock. I'm crazy here. Okay, let's talk about Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, GLBA, and what it has, SPF. Think of it like sunscreen, SPF. It's designed to protect you from something. So this law is designed to protect you from something in the mortgage business. It's 3 components are safeguarding, pretexting, financial privacy, SPF. It's also known as the Financial Services Modernization Act of 1999. Add that to the end. I don't know, it's not on the slide, but add it anyway. The Financial Services Modernization Act of 1999 is the same as Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act. You know, it was created by 3 senators, Gramm, Leach, and Bliley. So, safeguarding rules require financial institutions to design and maintain safeguards to protect consumers. Pretexting provisions protects consumers from individuals and companies that obtain their personal information under false or fictitious fraudulent pretenses. The financial privacy rules governs the collection of non-public personal information, how it gets shared, and giving you a right to opt in or opt out of this sharing. I'm going to address someone's question in the chat. Someone said they like it. Okay, so it's a way to help you remember what the act is about, like SPF, because everybody knows like it's to protect you if you got like sunscreen. So it can help you know that there are 3 components to the act, and you need to just know what those components are: safeguarding your information, stopping people from pretexting and pretending to be you, and stopping people you do business with from just giving your information out to any and everybody. So there are these laws that protect certain things that they cannot share. It's called NPI. NPI, non-public information. It's really kind of like stuff that people can't just Google about you. I know your names here, I said people here with their names. I can't just Google your bank account just because I know your first and last name. That's non-public information, so that's not allowed. The financial privacy rule does not allow that information to be shared. The USA Patriot Act was in response to the 9/11 terrorist acts. What it did was require the establishment of anti-money laundering programs. Lenders are required to verify the date of birth now, social security number or other form, and ethnicity of people actually coming into the country. USA Patriot Act. The do not call list, which changes every time you turn your head. I just recently updated this, so it has the most recent one in there. The do not call list allows consumers to file complaints with the FTC, Federal Trade Commission. Anyone that offers or sells goods, including loan originators, you must check this list every day and delete the people from the call list. Those phone numbers on the registry. There's like a national do not call list and an internal do not call list. It must be updated. We just say scrubbed, but it must be updated every 31 days, and you must keep the records documenting that this is happening for 2 years. So you must take them off the list if they want to be off every 31 days when you go through it. And then you need to update the fact that you went through it and keep the records regarding the transactions for 24 months. Okay, violators to be fined up to $46,517 per call. This recently changed again the other day to this. It was a lot less than this, but I remember when it started out at 10,000. So I don't know if there's a lot of violation going on regarding the do not call list, but they have really, really gone up in what they're charging people for calling. It's 46,517 per call. And each call, not each day, is considered a separate incident. There are some exceptions if there is an established business relationship, something called an EBR. The consumers can have up to 18 months to contact their clients if they had an established or previous relationship with them, or if someone calls them in the last transaction, the consumer made some type of an inquiry with you, was made, then you have up to 3 months that you can try to call them back and solicit their business. Up to 3 months. These are some of the other acts under the federal regulations. The MALS rules, I think I mentioned it a little bit earlier, have to do with loan modifications, mortgage assistance relief services. It dealt with loan modifications, short sales, and foreclosure relief scams. That's why we have the one that says no upfront fees. This law bans collecting any fees until the homeowners have acceptable written offers from the lender or servicer that they're going to approve a short sale, they're going to agree to a loan modification or some type of loss mitigation service. You cannot get paid until that has actually happened. The Bank Secrecy Act, BSA, Anti-Money Laundering Act, that's what it's referred to as, BSA/AML. The act requires financial institutions to keep detailed records of cash transactions over 10,000, withdrawing that amount, depositing it, or transporting it back and forth to different countries. The act also requires that loan originators report suspicious activity that might be a sign of tax evasion, money laundering, or other possible criminal activities. We as MLOs now, and I know it's a test question, we are required to report any suspicious activity exceeding $5,000. Okay, post in the chat, which regulation requires credit reporting to verify information that is under dispute and limits how long negative information can remain on the credit report? You guys can post in the chat. Go ahead, read it. You'll know it. There we go. Everybody kind of got it. A couple of people didn't. Let's see, Sarah. It's not Fair and Accurate Credit. It's Fair Credit Reporting Act, and that's FACRA. The answer is C. Don't get those two confused, especially if you're taking the exam. FACRA deals with credit reporting agencies, CRAs. Fair Credit Reporting Agencies deal with how long credit stuff can stay on your credit report. FACTA, Fair and Credit Transaction Act, deals with identity theft and how people can put stuff on your credit and try to steal your identity, but it has to do with identity theft and how to properly dispose of disclosures by burning or shredding them when you're done. So they sound similar, but they're not. Make sure you understand. Fair Credit Reporting Act deals with the credit reporting agencies, and FACTA deals with identity theft and how to dispose of disclosures. Everybody got it? Somebody says makes sense. Somebody said thank you. Great. You guys need to understand it when taking a test because it's so similar. You could just get confused in there, and I don't want that to happen. Next one says, FACTA mandates that a credit reporting bureau must remove unpaid tax liens. When do they have to remove unpaid tax liens? Post in the chat. I have a couple of people that know that's never. They're not paid. So read the question, because there's one that says, when can they remove paid tax lien? And when can they remove unpaid tax lien? If you're nervous and you're in there trying to take the test, you could miss a word. So take your time and look at it and say, are they asking me about the paid tax liens? Then that's after 7 years. Are they asking me about the unpaid tax liens? At this point, the answer is never. Okay, I got you guys' answers. The last two. The answer was D. Thank you. We're going to talk about non-traditional mortgage products. Anything other than a 30-year fixed rate loan is a non-traditional mortgage product. Let's talk about it. Who said so? The CFPB. The SAFE Act now says a non-traditional mortgage is anything other than a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. The SAFE Act defines traditional mortgages as a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. A conforming mortgage meets the standards set by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, whatever their standards are. If it's conforming to their standards. Now, if they conform to their standards, they can be sold in the secondary market. The secondary market is where the lenders buy and sell with each other. They don't buy and sell from us as mortgage loan originators. We play in the primary market. That's where we are. We have to negotiate and meet people and use our network in order to get our loans sold so that they get out there in the secondary market. Fannie, Freddie, and Ginnie are our secondary market players and people with a lot of money, large private investors. Non-conforming mortgages do not meet the standards of Fannie and Freddie. They cannot be sold on the secondary market, and they're more specifically called jumbo loans. Jumbo loans. We're talking about non-traditional mortgage products. Let's talk about different types of your promissory notes and what they are so that you understand them. A straight note is also called an interest-only note, and it calls for payment of interest only during the term of the note. A partially amortizing installment note or an installment note with a balloon, it calls for periodic payment of principal interest during the long term with a balloon payment at the end of the term to pay off the balance. There are a lot of questions on that exam about the balloon mortgage, and they ask them in lots of different ways. Make sure you understand everything about the balloon payment. Is it 360 / over 180? When is it amortized? Amortized for 360, but it comes due at 180 month. Make sure you understand what a balloon payment is and what can happen if they don't pay off the balance. They're either going to refinance it or they're going to lose the property. There are a lot of questions on there about balloon payments and how they work. Negative amortization means the monthly payment is not sufficient to cover the accrued interest from the previous month. That happens when you don't pay your full note, and then things that you're not paying are actually going onto the back of the loan. A fully amortizing installment note that calls for regular payments of your principal and your interest, calculated to pay off the entire balance by the end of the long term. That's what everybody wants it to be now. That's also referred to as a self-liquidating loan. Acceleration clause. Acceleration clause gives lenders the right to declare the whole balance due. We're going to avoid that at all costs. They will call it due immediately because the borrower defaults or for some other violations of the contract provision. So it's important for you to make sure that when they're reading the documents, the loan and the CD, there's some, what you call them, declarations in certain places that talk about things. It's a small print. And some of them talks about whether or not this loan has an acceleration clause or an alienation clause, and should make sure you pay special attention to that. Alienation clause is different from acceleration, so don't get them twisted. Alienation gives the lender the right to call the loan when there is a transfer of ownership in the property. Transfer of ownership is your key word, or due on sale clause, your keywords to look for. Acceleration is the borrower has defaulted on something. They want to call a loan. They want the whole balance paid off. They want to accelerate, like in a car. When you're driving, you accelerate, you speed things up. That's what acceleration means. They speed it up. They want it all because the borrower defaulted on some condition in the contract. Alienation is when the borrower doesn't say quit claim to his brother, transfer the ownership of the house to his brother, took off and did not consider getting approval to do that from the lender. So that was a transfer of ownership via a quit claim document or something of that nature. And then that gives the lender the right to do a due on sale clause, because the lender did not approve that. So you're looking for certain things in the question. If they say something about borrower default or something, they're talking about alienation. If the question reads and it says something like there was a transfer of ownership and in the scenarios and whatever, right there they're talking about alienation. The first one, I think I might have said it wrong. If they said something about the loan coming due immediately because of a borrower default, acceleration. But if they're talking about transfer of ownership to some other person, then they're talking about this alienation clause. Don't get them mixed up. See, I can even get them mixed up, but I know what they are. Let's talk about adjustable rate mortgages. How you create the fully indexed rate is basically what all the questions are going to be about, and knowing what the components of the adjustable rate mortgage are. The index plus the margin is considered the fully indexed rate. The index is often referred to as the cost of money. Examples include coffee, cozy. LIBOR has been changed. Make a note. I didn't catch that. I thought I did. LIBOR has been changed to SOFR, SOFR. LIBOR has been changed to SOFR. Hopefully the test has changed them as well. Secured overnight financing rate. LIBOR, LIBOR, is now SOFR, secured overnight financing rate. It's another one of the indices that banks use to get their money. The index is the part that adjusts, meaning it goes up and down. The margin, which is sometimes referred to as a spread, remains fixed for the life of the loan. The margin remains the same for the life of the loan. It does not change. It's the lender's profit. It's how the lenders make their money. There are certain buy down plans, meaning that the buyer wants to pay a less amount of interest or something of that nature. So they want to know if there are any discount points. That money is paid to buy down the interest rate so that they can lower the monthly mortgage payments. The discount points can be paid by the borrower, the seller, or the builder. There are permanent buy down plans to reduce the payment for the life of the loan. And there are temporary buy down plans that reduce the payments for maybe a specific period of time. 0.1% of a loan. That's what constitutes a point. Let's talk about reverse mortgages. It allows qualified borrowers 62 and older to convert the equity in their home without selling or making payments. The balance of the loan rises as the equity in the loan shrinks. So they refer to reverse mortgages as rising debt, falling equity. And you'll see those on your exam. Rising debt, falling equity, that's a reverse mortgage. The most popular type is an FHA, home equity conversion mortgage. We call them HECMs. What the heck is a HECM? Home equity conversion mortgage. It's FHA's reverse mortgage, and it's a very, very popular one. How it works is generally the money comes due once you've gotten a HECM when the last surviving borrower either dies, sells a home, they stop paying for the other things they still have to pay for, which are the upkeep of the house, the non-payment of their taxes and the insurance, or they cease to live in there for 12 consecutive months. That's generally how the reverse mortgages come due. If you have any questions, you could type them in the chat. Other mortgage products, hybrid ARM, and it's an adjustable rate mortgage with an initial fixed rate period greater than 1 year period. We have all kinds of them, and we used to do a lot of them. I don't, really know if there's other ones that we used to do are still out there, like the 525, 327s, and things of that nature. But we have examples of the 3-1, 5-1, 7-1, or 10-1 ARM. Those are hybrid ARMs. A biweekly mortgage. A biweekly mortgage is a payment plan on a fixed rate mortgage that's set up like a standard 30-year conventional loan, but the payments are made every 2 weeks instead of every month. The 26 annual payments actually equal up to 1 extra monthly payment per year. So biweekly mortgage is 26 payments. And I think there's another one that's like 24 payments, semi-annual, like every 1st and the 15th would be a 24 payment plan, not the same as a biweekly mortgage, like a bi-monthly payment type. A blanket mortgage covers more than one parcel of land or a lot, and it's usually used to finance some subdivision or developments. You see the building stuff going on all the time. And one developer might buy a whole bunch of parcels, and his loan may cover like 1 to 5 parcels that he's buying to build a little subdivision. A bridge mortgage, that's a loan right there that occurs between the termination of one mortgage and the beginning of the next. You're just waiting for the monies. When the next mortgage is taken out, then the bridge mortgage has to be repaid. You're just in transition a little bit right there. Cash out mortgage and refinance. This allows the owners to go in there and tap into the equity that they built up in the property over the years, but they can still retain the ownership. In order to take out the mortgage and a cash refinance, they're requiring you to have what's called a net tangible benefit. How is it beneficial for you to take the money out? As an MLO, if you're doing this refinance or something for a client, there must be a benefit for that client for them to do their finance, not just for you to make a decent amount of money for doing a transaction. A home equity loan, we have a home equity loan, which is usually a one-time loan taken out for a specific amount of money, a specific purpose, and it's considered to be a closed-end loan. Remember the red items, test questions. A closed-end loan. We also have a home equity line of credit, a HELOC. A HELOC is money that is available to the homeowner to be borrowed as needs arise, and that's considered an open-end loan. They both own the equity of your home, but they're different because one's a closed-end and one's an open-end loan. Those definitely are test questions, so hopefully either you already knew those or maybe it can help someone that's on here that didn't really know how that works. A package mortgage, is one that includes personal property, like the appliances and the property sale. They all get refinanced in one contract. Maybe you want the refrigerator, maybe you like the dining area, dining room set, and you wanted to know if you could purchase it and have it just bundled in with the purchase price of the property. And that's appropriate. That can happen. Let's do a little quizzy here. Promissory note calling only for payment of both principal and interest is called what? Which one of those are we talking about? Promissory note. Post in the chat. Come on now. More than one person knows this. Okay, did anybody get it? Let's see, I went too fast. Yeah. Somebody might not have gotten it. Let me see. I'm gonna go back to it, but it won't let me. Okay. Number 2, a clause that gives the lender certain stated rights when there is a transfer of ownership. What is that called? Post it in the chat. What clause is that one? Transfer of ownership. Everybody got that one. Yay. Very good. Thank you very much. Okay. We're going to talk about mortgage loan origination activities. Those of you that took the test, maybe you can let me know like what the area that you didn't really, pass in. If you want to, you could type it in the chat. But we're going to talk about mortgage loan origination. What we've done actually now has basically been the federal mortgage related laws, the 30-year fixed rate, been the only one that they're considering and things of that nature. So we're going to talk a little bit now up until 12 on the mortgage loan origination. And we're going to do a short break, 12 to 12:30, not an hour, 12 to 12:30 for you just to be able to grab a bite and come back to the presentation. That's like 20 minutes. So I'll just tell you and I'll stop the recording and put it back on when we come back. Let's look at mortgage loan origination. If you have any questions for me, make sure you put them in the chat. Let's look at the cycle so we know what it is we're doing. Why are we in this industry? Where are we going with this? How does it work? We're step number 1, actually. We're the origination. We're the process of making or initiating a new loan. Our job is pretty easy. We get the client and then we get their information. We take the application, basically the 1003. We generally get their bank statements and a couple of other documents. We might ask them for their work, what do you call W-2s? Yeah, we get their bank statements, we get their W-2s. Basically, that's what we do. We help them complete the 1003, the application where they live for 2 years, where they've worked and things of that nature. That's what our job entails us to do, to help them complete the loan application as we begin to originate a loan. Once we have actually received that information, we send it to step number 2, processing. We are not the processors. We were the loan originators. So we sent to the process. Processors have to verify that information that we collected. They have to verify that they lived at that location. They have to verify they've been employed on that job for more than 2 years. They have to verify, you got the VOEs, the VODs, they have to verify the money's in the banks. They verify the mortgages that they have with other people, the VOMs and the VODs. They have to do that. That's the second step. The processor does that. And once the processor has done that, they then send that file to the underwriter. Underwriter is working for the bank. They're not your friend, they're the bank's friend. Their responsibility is to mitigate any type of loss that could happen to their job, to their bank. So they're looking and evaluating and deciding on whether the information that was verified by the processor is sufficient enough for them to decide to make a decision whether or not to fund this loan. And the underwriter does that. They don't have everything they need, then they request it from the processor. If the processor doesn't have it, he requests it from you, MLO. As MLO, we've kind of been released to try to go out and get our new deal, while this one is going through the rest of the process. But we are responsible for making sure that they have all the accurate and complete information. So once the underwriter has done that and made the decision, then they're going to send the loan over to servicing. Loan gets funded, goes to servicing. So the servicing is a continued maintenance of the loan after it's closed. That's why I said I make sure to let you know that the lenders may or may not decide to service the loan in-house, and that's when they would farm it out to third-party services to collect the money, the taxes and insurance, and to notify the banks when the borrowers are late, and to fix any other problems that come up as a part of their servicing agreement. Standard MLO activities. The Uniform Residential Application, the URLA, also called the 1003, is the Fannie Mae's number 1003, Freddie's Form 65. We use the same form. Underwriting, the underwriter evaluates documentation, the borrower's information, and they're looking at the various risk factors in order for them to make a decision. They use several ways to do that. Automated information, that's information fed to automatic underwriting system, the AUS. Most of the time you hear everybody saying, oh, can you put it in the AUS? Can I get a DU? You know, that's like direct underwriter or something. Manual, and maybe some smaller lenders, they would have an individual who just works for the lender and just does it all by themselves, the calculator. Fannie Mae's automated underwriting system is desktop underwriter. That's why everybody's trying to get what they call the DU. Freddie Mac has a similar system right now called Loan Product Advisor. These are the various underwriting system to help the loan move through the system expeditiously. Conventional loans, I mentioned those earlier. Conventional loans are not insured or guaranteed by any government entity. It's just a conventional loan that someone goes to the bank and gets a loan by putting their money down and getting themselves approved. They're not trying to get approved for any type of particular program. The qualifying ratios for conventional loans are more stringent. The housing expense ratio, the front end, is 28%, and the total debt to income ratio, the back end, not more than 36%. That's hard to make. Also, PMI is required if the loan to value is greater than 80%. And they have a late fee of 5% of the PNI only that's being collected if they're coming in late, and it's a non-conventional loan. Let me check the chat because someone is trying to ask me something. Somebody about you thought a conventional loan is a GSE? GSE is a government entity. That would be Fannie or Freddie. That was not the definition of a conventional loan. GSE is a government-sponsored entity. That's Fannie, Mae, and Freddie, a government-sponsored entity. They are the secondary market players. There is no type of loan called a GSE loan. It is a government loan. If it's made by Fannie or Freddie, if it conforms to the regulations for Fannie and Freddie, it's a government sponsored loan. Conventional loans are not guaranteed or insured by any government entity. So conventional loans are not GSEs. PMI is required if the loan to value is greater than 80%, and the late fee is what's charged on every servicer charges a late fee for the loans that they service, whether they're conventional or whether they're government. If they are servicing a conventional loan, that means taking a insurance and taxes and paying them and notifying the lender when things go wrong, they get paid for that. If it's a conventional loan, they get 5% of the principal and interest payment If the consumer is late, they'll be paid 5% on conventional loans. Services do the same thing on government loans. And on government loans, they only charge 4%, my bad. They only charge 4% for servicing government loans, the services, but the services charge 5% for servicing conventional loans. That's how services actually make their money. So this being conventional is 5% what they're getting charged. FHA, what do they do? So people understand. FHA insures mortgages. The mortgage loans are not made by FHA. FHA does not make loans. All loans for FHA, VA, and conventional, all loans are made by approved lenders, people. No matter whether it's a government or non-government, the lenders are the banks. The banks get themselves approved with the various programs that are out there. So the banks are making the loans. FHA insures the bank. FHA down payment of 3.5% with a FICO score of 580 above for the credit score. Sellers may contribute up to 6% of the lesser of the sale price or their appraised value toward closing costs. FHA loans are closing, most the seller can put toward the closing costs to help is 6%. FHA loans, the government wants them to occupy them as their principal residence within 2 months. 60 days is 2 months on everything, people. Remember, everything in red is a test question. Sometimes it'll say within 60 days, and then the next question will say within 2 months. Same question, 60 days is 2 months. Don't let them trick you. And they must stay in the loan, stay in the property for 12 months, or they must stay there for 1 year. 12 months is 1 year. So look at how they do things in this testing area. You'll see the same question. You thought I already answered that question, but when I saw that question, it says within 2 months. Now here this question is again, and this doesn't have 2 months for me to choose. Well, 2 months is 60 days. You gotta be sharp. Well, it said they need to stay there for 12 months. And now I've got this question, 12 months is not one of my choices, but it did have 1 year. 1 year is the same as 12 months. Understand how they do this, people. Understand. Everybody still there? Okay. MIP is required. MIP is mortgage insurance premium. MIP. Let's see. Hold on. Can I get somebody to post in the chat if you're still there? It's something kind of went away on my screen. Somebody post, you can still hear me. Okay, great. Thank you, guys. I don't know where you guys disappeared from my screen. Thank you. MIP is different from what we were talking earlier. MIP, mortgage insurance premium, not PMI. On loans, on the FHA government loan, there are 2 types of insurance. You have MIP and UFMIP. Remember that. MIP is mortgage insurance premium, not private mortgage insurance. A lot of areas around this, people get messed up. MIP is not PMI. Doesn't do the same thing, doesn't have any connection. MIP is on government loans. PMI is on conventional loans only. You have 2 types of MIP on your FHA loan. You got your MIP require like the monthly down payment, and you got the UFMIP. There is no prepayment penalty, and collecting the late fees and stuff is only 4% of the P&I, not 5%. FHA is a government loan. The housing expense ratio for FHA loans are still at 31% front end and 43% back end. There are some instances when things are different. That would be some type of compensating factor. If the front end ratio is not 3143, it's because of some compensating factor that the bank has allowed the borrower to use. Like maybe they had a very, very high back end, higher than 43%, but they could show in the bank that they had a lot of money in reserve. That to the bank, that might be a compensating factor. You know, the DTI was higher than what we were looking for, but look, they got a gazillion amount of money and a reserve saving account, so we will still go ahead with that. Those will be called compensating factors, individually investigated by each lender if the back-end ratio was higher than what they wanted to approve. Guaranteed VA loans through the veteran benefit, the maximum guarantee here is 25% of the purchase price of the appraised value, whichever is lower. That's what they guarantee. MIP, how long is it required? If it's financed into the mortgage, it's there for the life of the loan. If it's financed, it cannot never be canceled into the life of the loan. It could be paid at the closing, but if it's not paid all at closing and it gets financed into the life of the loan, then that MIP does not come off. For someone that asked a question about how long is the MIP there, it's required for the life of the loan, but depending on how it gets paid as well. I'll look into something else up about that on the break and see if I can provide you any more information regarding that MIP. VA DD 214 and COE is what's required. They don't do a front end ratio for VA, but they do a back end of 41%. They do 2 types of appraisal, not at the same time. It's either or, CRV or NOV. Typically, the FHA appraisers are the ones who does the appraising for the VA. So somebody might want to do a CRE appraisal, and the next person might use the NOV, notice of value, certificate of reasonable value, or notice of value. No down payments required, VA loans, no prepayment penalties required, and the no refundable fee. The VA charges at one-time variable funding fee. The one-time variable funding fee, and that fee is required at closing, and it's used to pay our costs as MLO and everything. Non-refundable, one-time non-refundable variable funding fee means the fee can change based on, I guess, the amount of the property. It's waived for disabled veterans, or it could be waived for surviving spouses of veterans. They also want the veteran to occupy the principal residence, to get in there within 60 days of the closing, and they want you to stay there for 12 months. Okay, again, 60 days is how many months? 12 months is still a year. On a VA loan, the lenders can charge the one flat fee. That's the 1%. That's covering the lender's cost. The VA, the late fee, again, is 4% because it's still a government loan on P&I. Oh, this thing is flashing. Okay, let's see here. We got to do the Section 502 loans and what they are. We're like 3 minutes or something from the 12 o'clock break, believe it or not. You guys been here almost 3 hours. The USDA section loans are also called Section 502. Make a note of that. The USDA loan is called a Section 502 loan. There is always 100% financing. These loans provide financial support to low-income home buyers in rural communities or farm communities. They can consider a rural community a small town with up to 35,000 people. These loans are administered by the Department of Agriculture. The Department of Agriculture administers the USDA or the Section 502 loans. There's no maximum loan amount, no prepayment penalty. And the loan late fee charges, but for the services is still 4%. In order to determine, that's one thing that to determine, let me see if it's on the next slide. It didn't, but anyway, to determine the income for people trying to get the USDA loans, they use something called maximum benefit, where they would multiply the average income of the person that are living in that community by 115% to determine what the maximum amount a person can earn and also still be qualified for a USDA loan. So they would get the information regarding the medium income that everyone is making in small town USA, and which is $50,000 is the average that everyone makes in small town USA. Then they would multiply that $50,000 by 115%, which is a maximum benefit or something. I forgot the exact word. And they multiply that by the 115%, and that will give you the amount that a person could make, the maximum amount that the person could make and living in that town. So I'll look that up too at break time. Let's just stop right here as we're going to talk about appraisal approaches. And we're going to come back from the quick little lunch break. It's going to be 30 minutes. So back at 12:30, I am going to pause the video at this time, but I will be right back at 12:30. Pause the recording is what I meant. We were about to talk about the appraisal approaches. There's various approaches that appraisers use to determine the value of the property. We have the sales comparison approach or market approach, where the appraiser compares property being appraised with other similar properties. We call them comparables or comps that were sold recently in the same market area. And it's the best approach for residential properties. A minimum of 3 comparables is required by most secondary market lenders. 3 comps, that test question, remember the things in red. The cost approach or replacement cost approach is best for relatively new construction, vacant land, and unusual or special purpose properties that do not produce any income. It's also used when evaluating the cost to replace property that was damaged due to natural disasters. We have the income approach, also called the capitalization approach, and it estimates value by analyzing current or potential revenue, compared it to other similar properties that is best for commercial or investment properties. Okay, so this is from some of the stuff that we were talking about before we went to the break. What type of loans require a one-time variable funding fee? Can you post in the chat either the VA loans, FHA loans, conventional, or USDA loans? One-time variable funding fee. Oscar is the VA loans. It's a DVA loan because they changed their name from just Veterans Affairs to Department of Veterans Affairs. That's probably why it's a D on the front of it. So I don't want it to confuse you in case they do use that on the exam, DVA instead of just VA. It's the VA loans that requires a one-time variable funding fee, not the FHA loans, so that you know. Which appraisal is best for appraising vacant land, new construction, or for unusual special purposes? You want to post in the chat what do you think they use? I see a lot of them. Thank you, Oscar. I want to make sure you got it. And the rest of you seem to get this. They use a cost approach. They don't know what it's going to cost to replace these types of things. Very good. Let's talk about the documentation that's required to get approval. If someone is self-employed, the borrower is going to need personal and corporate tax return for a minimum of 2 years. They have a corporation. The wage earner borrower should have continuous employment for at least 2 years in the same field. If not, changes for advancement or special education and trainings are acceptable. Maybe they were working 2 years at some place, and then they got promoted to a manager in the same field at another place, then that educational upgrade would be acceptable. Alimony, child support, and or maintenance do not need to be listed as a source of income if the borrower does not want them considered. If a borrower chooses to use this alimony or child support, then we can consider it. We cannot discriminate against where it comes from, but we can discriminate if it's not enough. So it goes to saying that we're not allowed to discriminate against the source of income, but we can discriminate against the amount of income. If the amount is not enough to pay the mortgage on the property that we're trying to get them, then we can discriminate, tell them you're not making enough money. But we can't say you're on Social Security and we can't use that money. The tax-free income, you have to add it up by 25%. Public assistance income, they say it's grossed up by 25%. And the rental income has to be calculated at 75% for us vacancy factor, so it's grossed down by 25%. It's SS meaning Social Security. That's definitely considered, the person who asked that question, SS, Social Security, tax-free. Yeah, that comes on the public assistance. That's public assistance income. Social Security, SSI, pension, whatever, 401k, stuff like that, if that's what you're using for income. That's tax-free. So you gross it up, you add to it to make it work. And if it's rental, you take 25% off of it in the calculation for qualification. That's where that's coming up. Hourly wages, we don't have a lot of income calculations on here, but in the book that I sent you, or exercises for math, there's only going to be 1 or 2 math questions on the whole thing, so you could miss all of them and still pass it if you knew the other questions. But typically, most students start out wrong on their math questions, especially the ones that want you to convert hours and wages. They do the first computation wrong. And after they do that wrong, everything else is wrong. They try to calculate it based on 4 weeks being considered a month, and that's not how it's done. To convert the wages to monthly, you take the hourly rate times the hours worked per week. That's times 52 weeks per year, and then divide by 12, not times 4 weeks a month. That does not come out to the right answer. Hourly wage times hours worked per 52 weeks per year divided by 12. Weekly salary is the number of weeks times 52 weeks a year divided by 12. Biweekly salary is the biweekly pay times 26, the number of pay days per year divided by 12. And that's the one I was trying to think of earlier. The semi-monthly or bi-monthly salary paid times 24, the number of pay days per year divided by 12. So generally, if you got these calculations right, when you start the math section, you'll be able to do the rest of the question that they give you. But most of the time, students, they don't know how to calculate that part. The loan to value calculation, loan to value and the combined loan to value. A lot of people have trouble with that. The loan to value is abbreviated as LTV. It's the first loan amount divided by the lesser of the sales price or the appraised value. That means whichever one is lower is the one that you use for that calculation. The combined loan to value, CLTV, is the first loan amount plus the second loan amount divided by the lesser of the sales price or appraised value. Combined loan to value, you take the first loan amount, take the second loan amount, and then divide it by the lesser of the sales price or appraised value. So if you guys want to do these calculations, that's and Gita, I know you're on here, you're pretty good here with the math, so you want to lead the charge on these calculations and post in the chat, and I can tell the others what the answer is if they don't have it. If you have a home that has an appraised value of $120,000 and a sales price of $125,000, and the loan amount on the first TD of that home is $90,000, and the loan amount on the second is $10,000, what is your LTV and what is this combined LTV? Go ahead and do that calculation and post it in the chat. I see one person. I don't blame you because I don't really do well on the math. Got the LTV at 75%. What is the combined LTV? The combined LTV would be at 83%. You guys don't know how to do that, you might want to do some practice on how to do it. How to do that, because you might run into those type of questions on your exam. Maybe only a couple, but they're going to be there. Let's talk about qualifying standards and ratios. front end ratio, housing expense ratio. They use a lot of terminology in this program. Front end ratio is the same thing as housing. It is a relationship of the borrower's total monthly housing expense, PITI, to income expressed as a percentage. Here's the formula. The PITI, the principal, the interest, the tax, and the insurance, is divided by the gross monthly income to get the ratio. That's your front end. Then you have the back end ratio, which they call the TOR, total obligations ratio, or just back end ratio. It is the relationship of the borrower's total monthly debt obligations, PITI, plus long-term debt to income expressed as a percentage. 10 payments or less do not count. The only exception is if it's an auto lease or a lease or something. If you owe a bill, that bill's going to be paid off within the next 10 months, you don't have to put it in there. So that'll make you have a better chance of a lower DTI in the back end, because you don't have to count those debts unless it's a lease. For PITI, the housing expense, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, plus the debt divided by the gross monthly income, this gives you the back end ratio. Practice example for you guys. See if you can post it in the chat. Smith's annual income is $60,000. The expected PITI is $1,550. The monthly recurring debt payments are $450. What's the borrower's front end ratio and the borrower's back end ratio? I give you time to calculate that. You got an answer, post in the chat. And I will review it with the others. I don't see anybody posting anything in the chat regarding the front end and back end ratio. Anybody? And Tito, are you online? I know you're very good at the math. And you posted the front end and back end. So they explain to the others how it's done. So far, the front end ratio is 20. Okay, I see a bunch of people coming in here. Back end's at 30%. The front end's at 25. Anybody else? Back end 30. Is it the same people posting? I don't think I gave the answer. So the qualifying ratios that you have to be aware of, or the front end, back end for the various type of programs. Remember, we have conventional loans. They have no government involvement. They're a little bit more strenuous. We have the front end at 28%. Back end is 36. The FHA loan is 31 front end, 43 back end, and VA loans, the front end is not used, and the back end is 41%. 33 back end, I got back. Somebody said 30, somebody said 33. Back end 30, back end 33. I'm gonna trust Njita's. Njita, did you post the front end as well? Because I know she's a math whiz. She never missed any of the math questions. The only ratio that they show in the chart that they don't show in the chart is the one for the USDA. It has a 29 front end. You got to just make a note of that. I don't know why it's not here. 2941, the USDA. So we have conventional, 2836, FHA, 3143, and VA not used, just the 41 back in. And we have the USDA 2941. It tells you how to do it here to compute the maximum mortgage amount. MMA, FHA, and conventional loans, they don't really go by how much you made. It kind of go by how much they're going to finance, for lack of a better word. They compute something called MMA, maximum mortgage amount. They use the front end DTI and the appropriate program, FHA or conventional, of monthly gross income times the front ratio gives you the maximum PITI. To compute the maximum margin amount using the back end for the appropriate program, which are only appropriate programs that calculate MMA is FHA and conventional. You would calculate the monthly gross income times the back ratio, take out the debt. That gives you the maximum PITI for the back end. Once you do that simple calculation, you just simply choose the one that's the lowest of the two. That's how you calculate MMA, my bad. MMA, maximum monthly amount, only gets calculated on FHA loans and conventional loans. To compute the maximum mortgage amount using the front end DTI, is the monthly gross income times the front ratio that gives you the maximum PITI. To compute it on the back end, you take the back end, take the monthly gross income times the back ratio, minus out the debt, and that gives you the maximum PIT on the back end. Whichever one of those calculations is the lowest of the two would be the answer to the problem. You just simply look at them once you calculate. If one's 85% and one's 65% amount, the amount for the one that's 65% would be the lower of the two. If you want to do this calculation and post in the chat. This is our section on the math section. The borrower stable monthly income of 4,000, recurring debts of 600. If he's getting the FHA loan, what's the maximum monthly payment for which he's going to qualify for? You have to use that calculation that I just gave you. If anybody can do it, then post it in the chat. I don't think you guys are going to be any good at math. Nobody's posting. The chat is like blank. Anybody? One person is brave enough. Only one person here. Let's see who posted it. A couple of people there. Somebody's got 1240, which the answer is C. Okay, to AK. Another person's got it. I think that's in Gita's iPad. The answer is C. And a couple of people, Oscar, I don't know if you did that one. It's got an answer in there. Your answer is D, but I don't think it's D. I think it's C. You may want to redo it and recheck the formula for calculating MMA. Pick the lowest of the two. We're gonna move it to the next session. It's ethics. Hey, I don't know where it went. Hopefully we don't end up with short day because it's not here. That's weird. My ethics not coming up, my section on ethics. Let me see. Uh-oh. Looks like, shoot, we had a problem. Unfortunately, guys, looks like something wiped out the last section of this particular slide. Let me go here. A lot of things were missing in there. I really don't know how that happened. Let me check this out for a minute. I just want to finish this without having to go back and redo that. What happened on that slide? I don't see it. I don't see anything in there. Let me do this. Let me just delete these out. I don't know why they're like that until we get to the next section. But I don't want us to have to do this all over. I'm going to stop the recording for a moment. I'm gonna just resume. I don't know what happened to those slides or how that happened. I was trying to update some things, but um, I'm going to start talking about fraud, which is the main concern with the ethics section, and see if I can finish it for you. Fraud deals with misrepresentation, concealment, or omission of a material fact. Actual fraud is the intent to deceive. Constructive fraud is unintentional, the result of carelessness or negligence. We talk about fraud in terms of the mortgage industry that we're in. Mortgage fraud is any misrepresentation or concealment used in an attempt to obtain a mortgage. They consider two categories of the mortgage fraud. That is the fraud for property. Basically, that's a consumer fraud, and the borrowers misrepresent information on their loan applications so that they can qualify, including but they're not limited to misrepresenting income and expenses, lying about the property being owner occupied versus tenant occupied, and lying about the source of amount of the down payment, where the money comes from. That's what the consumers are considered to do. Fraud for property. Fraud for profit is said to be committed by us. They consider that we're like industry insiders, and we all collude together in certain ways to commit fraud for money, for profit. This type of fraud is more sophisticated version of mortgage fraud because it involves everybody: real estate agents, appraisers, lenders, closing agents, attorneys, and they're kind of in collusion with each other. Some examples of fraud for property include flipping, straw buyers, bogus sales, inflated appraisals, and air loans. An air loan is a non-existent loan with no collateral. Deed scams where we forge sellers' signatures on the deed. The property is fraudulently transferred and the deed then gets recorded in a new person's name. A double sold loan is primary mortgage holder sells the loan to a fraudulent company for servicing. The borrower signs multiple copies of the same application or documents that the loan originator submits to different lenders. The unrecorded or silent second, the buyer gives the seller a second mortgage without informing the lender or makes the lender aware, but never intends to file the lien to make any payments to the seller with the seller agreement. Equity skimming, it involves lenders making various types of loans, knowing the borrowers will not be able to make the monthly payments. This is like the lender doing this. So set them up for foreclosure. Then the borrower could lose everything, the home, all the equity in it. The lender gets the home back and resell it again. Loan flipping, refinancing loans where there's no tangible benefit to the borrower. Straw buyer, breaking someone else in order to do the loan using their name, social security number, things of that nature. Also under the ethics, we have the predatory lending. That has to do with certain factors. And it's considered to be predatory. The first one is the bait and switch. It's an allure and offer, very, very low rate, something of that nature, but it's an sincere offer to sell a product or service. The purpose is to just switch the consumer from buying whatever was advertised, whatever product, to buying something else. It happens in sales and happens in mortgages and things too. The switch after sale, what's different with this one is that you've taken money after accepting a deposit for a product, then they switch that product to a higher priced item. Let's switch after sale. Failure to make delivery of a product within a reasonable time or make a refund. A bona fide offer. A bona fide offer is a refusal of the advertiser to show, demonstrate, or sell products that they offered, or disparagement of the advertised product. Once they get there telling them all kinds of things about it's not good and you'll be better off if you buy this other one because I'm not showing you and demonstrating you some product that's defective in order to get you to buy something else, which after sell bona fide offers. It's an unusable or impractical for the purpose that was represented. This is not the item that was advertised, not the item that became for. Let's post in the chat. Only 2 questions, guys, per chapter. So it's moving kind of fast. Fine. Let's see. Got that. Everybody got it right. Everyone. That would be your bait and switch. Second one, post it in the chat. I have 2. Yeah, that one's kind of easy. Yes, I just took the word actively and knowing that if it's actively, then that would be actual fraud. Very good. Okay, we're on the last section. Like I said, it may not take the whole 2 hours for that. This is the Uniform Safe Test, UST. The SAFE Act, or the Uniform State Content. This was done to keep us from having to apply. But you still, if you want to get your license in different states, you still have to go and apply for the license, particularly in the different states, but you don't have to test. Before, if you wanted to take California, you take California, you have to test California. You wanted Arizona, you'd have to test for Arizona. You have to do their education, which is 1 or 2 hours here and there, but there is no test anymore because they changed it and made it the SAFE Act with the Uniform State Content. The SAFE Act, a Housing and Economic Recovery Act. Someone has a question for me, let me see. You could always get licensed in every state. I think that's Sarah. Yeah, once you originally get a license, you can be licensed in all 50 states. You just have to do the states that need the additional education. There's about 20 that you get automatically with your first license that you don't even have to worry about. They're just automatically a part of the, if you did Affinity, I mean, I don't know who you took it with, but with our course, you automatically get a certain amount of states already approved, something like 20 to 22. And the other ones, you have to go in there and do their 1 or 2 hours of education on their state, and then you get a license. The thing about it that makes it special is you don't have to test for it. You only have to just read their information and stuff like that. So, okay. So HERA is a parent to the SAFE Act. The SAFE Act stands for the Secure and Fair Enforcement for Mortgage Licenses Act. Also, it is known as Title V of HERA. So you know that in case you run into a question that asks you what is Title V of HERA. It's the SAFE Act, Secure and Fair Enforcement. The organization, Nationwide Mortgage Licensing System and Registry. Sometimes you see NMLS and you see NMLSR. The R simply stands for the registry, where they put us so that they can keep track of us. The Conference of State Bank Supervisors, CSBS, and the American Association of Residential Mortgage Regulators, AARMR, they created the NMLS. They worked with HUD to create this system as a means of being able to put all of us in like one database and be able to track us with that unique identifier and things like that. So there's explanation here of who is a loan originator. It's defined by what they do. An individual who takes a residential mortgage loan application, offers or negotiates terms of a residential mortgage loan for compensation or gain. On your exam, you're looking for that last little prepositional phrase, for compensation or gain. That is a mortgage loan originator. It does not include an individual who performs administrative or clerical tasks for a licensee. It does not include extending credit on timeshare plans. It does not include an individual who negotiates a mortgage loan for themselves or immediate family members. You do not need a license to do a loan for your mom or your dad or your sister or brother, but your cousin Pookie twice removed, that's a different story. A loan processor or underwriter who does not represent to the public through their advertising with business cards and brochures, etc., that he or she is a loan originator. Attorneys who negotiate loan terms as an ancillary service and who aren't compensated by a loan originator or lender. That does not make them a loan originator. The SAFE Act requires the NMLS to be identified by the unique identifier number. You will be either a registered loan originator or you will be a state licensed loan originator. A registered loan originator who is an employee of a depository institution, which is a bank, regulated by a federal banking agency or an institution regulated by the Farm Credit Administration. They are registered. They're registered to that institution that they work for. They use a number that they get provided there. A state licensed loan originator is what you're trying to do, who is licensed by his or her state, registered with the NMLSR, is not employed by a depository institution. If you're in this class now, you're likely planning to become a state licensed loan originator. It gets kind of crazy because it's federal. You have to pass the national exam, which is a federal exam, but you're licensed by the state that you're in. So you're a state licensed loan originator, but your license comes through the taking of a national exam. So that's why some people say, I want to get my state license. It really is, when it boils right down to it, you really are getting a state license, but you're doing it through the national mortgage licensing system. A little tricky there. Information on how you cannot get a license or how it can be revoked or things of that nature. If the applicant has never had a mortgage loan originator license revoked in any governmental jurisdiction, he's fine. If the applicant has not been convicted of or pled guilty or nolo contendere to a felony during the 7-year period preceding the date of the application for licensing and registration, that's fine. Or at any time preceding such date of application, if such felony involved an act of fraud, dishonesty, or breach of trust or money laundering, the applicant will not be able to get a license. Pre-licensing education, hopefully you guys all know this, that have already taken this or and just in here for some additional information, because the more you talk about this training and the more you involve yourself in this type of training, the easier it's going to be for you to get your license. I know some people are struggling with it, but it will come. You have to do your 20 hours of pre-licensing education, 3 hours of federal, 3 hours of ethics, 2 hours of non-traditional, and your electives could have been 12 hours of anything. What we did for Affinity, where our students are passing a high rate, we didn't use electives to talk about our vacation or our upcoming wedding or our trip here with our friends or my great grandkids. We use our electives to put in more education about the exam. We just flooded our 12 hours with more and more testing, more questions, more stuff. So our students passed at a higher rate. We got 92% plus higher rate because we use that information in that elective section to keep talking about what you need to pass the test. I'm not sure all course providers use their electives in the manner that we did. So students are calling us saying, I took company cram, I took on course, I tried that and I'm not passing. But basically the information that we put in our course, especially our other course that we offer, like a master exam prep, we put that same information in there. So our students just kind of double up on that, and it's really helping them to pass with a higher passing score. The continuing education, we have to do that every year. That's just part of the deal. You complete 8 hours, 3221, 3221. You do 3 hours of federal, 2 hours of ethics, 2 hours of non-traditional, and 1 hour of elective. I just said 3221. That will help me complete my 8 hours of continuing education. I have to do it every year. You just have to watch out for who you do it with and make sure that they have a new course approved every year. In fact, that's what I'm actually working on. Students who took it with me maybe last year won't be able to take it with me this year until my new class is approved. That's called the successive year rule. You can't take the same class with the same provider that you took the year before. Just make sure you're being careful with your CE classes. Here are the minimum requirements that the state authority want you to know under the NMLS, providing effective supervision and enforcement of the law, suspicion termination for violation of any federal law. I've had some people I've been training that were in violation of the rules of conduct, and they made them do all of this stuff all over again. Ensuring all state license operating state are registered with the NMLS, report any violations as well as enforcement actions. A state agency has authority to do certain things. They can conduct investigations and deal with visitations or complaints arising under the SAFE Act. The state regulatory authority has access to books, records, and may interview the MLO and related persons concerning their business. They can issue licenses to conduct business, including the authority to write some rules and regulations and procedures. They can deny, suspend, condition, or revoke your license that were issued under this act. They can have in place one of the 3 protections under the SAFE Act. We're still talking about these UST components, additional things that you have to know at the test. They have to have minimum net worth, a surety bond, or a state recovery fund. If some of you guys were involved in this maybe a year or so ago, they used to call this part of the test the DVO. This is now information that comes under DFPI. DFPI, all of this state regulatory authority responsibility now is shifted for California. DFPI, the Department of Financial Protection and Innovation. I don't know I don't know if you're in other states, some of you guys, who your state regulatory authorities are. These are the responsibilities in every state. But if you don't know who's going to regulate you in the state where you are, you probably should find it out. And it's easy when you log into your NMLS website. At the very top up there, it'll say state regulatory authorities. When you click that link, it'll put a map of the United States on the screen. And you just look for the state that you're in and point the pointer there and then click on the state that you're in. And it will open up and it will tell you who are the state regulatory authorities for Tennessee, who are the state regulatory authorities for Texas. Then you should click on that and read what can they do, what are their requirements. They can all have to do these certain things here, the supervision, making sure you register, report the violations, access your records to get licensed. They can all deny and suspend and revoke your license, no matter what regulatory authority it is. They all have to have one of these 3 surety bonds to protect what you do out there in the field, either minimum net worth, they have a surety bond or some type of state recovery bond. And the state and federal regulations, they don't have the authority to put you in jail. They can do the other things, but and that's a test question. What do they not have the authority to do? They do not have the authority to impose prison sentences. Here are the penalties. Again, I just recently updated it last week. for each penalty for each act or omission that you may commit now is at 31,928 for 2022. That's basically the first act of omission. I'm pretty sure that was it. They just keep compounding this. If it goes higher, you keep doing the same thing, or there's something still being filed against you. But as an MLO, it starts with 31,928. If you are penalized for some act or omission that you knew you were supposed to report. It employs any scheme. If you employ any type of scheme trying to defraud a borrower, a lender, or engage in what they call UDAPs, any unfair, deceptive practices and acts toward a person. If you were to obtain some property by fraud or misrepresentation, you solicit a contract, but you get a fee, and you says, well, you weren't able to get me a loan, but you know what, Miss Allen, I tried. You know, I put in several applications for you, and I put my best foot forward. I worked, it was my best effort. And I think I'm going to give you this bill for $1,500, and you need to pay me because I put my best foot forward. I did my best efforts to get you a loan. You cannot do anything of that nature. You cannot solicit a contract with specific terms unless those terms are available. You cannot conduct or assist in business without having a valid license. You can't just go out and sell a home without a license unless you're doing it, like I said, to one of those types of people like your relative or somebody that you don't need a license for. You cannot not comply with Safe Act rules and regulations. You cannot make false and deceptive statements, representations with regards to any rates on the loans, what are the points out there, or other financing terms for a mortgage loan. You cannot engage in that bait and switch advertising. You cannot negligently make any false statements that knowingly, willfully leave out some material fact in connection with the information reports that's going to be filed. You make any payment, make threats or promises to a person, or an appraiser for the purpose of influence the judgment of the appraiser in connection with the residential mortgage loan with respects to the property value. In other words, don't try to bribe the appraiser. So he comes in and gives you the value that you need to close the deal, which may not necessarily be the value of the property. Actually, or attempt to collect, charge, or purpose, or use any agreement to collect, charge any fee prohibited by the Safe Act. Do not cause a borrower to get property insurance coverage exceeding the improvement and replacement costs, making sure that you're just not having them get like $1 million insurance policy and they just only had $200,000-$300,000 property. Anything over and above what's reasonable. Failing to account for monies to a party to residential mortgage loan transaction. You're supposed to be their fiduciary as well. When you accept money, it's not supposed to be commingled with your own monies or somewhere where the client doesn't know what you're doing with their money. The SAFE Act amended in 2018 the passage of something called Economic Growth Regulatory Relief and Consumer Protection Act. All of that were amended to mandate that all states implement something called transitional authority for MLOs seeking to become licensed in other states or who seek to move from a bank to a non-bank lender. So this temporary authority, what is temporary authority? To act as a mortgage loan originator provided by the amendments. Well, it provided that qualified MLOs who are changing employment from a depository institution, a bank, to a state licensed mortgage company, just being an MLO, and qualified state licensed MLOs seeking license in another state. These individuals were allowed to go ahead and keep working, originate loans, while they were completing their state-specific educational requirements for license, such as the education testing for up to 120 days. So if you are working at a bank and you want to get out of that bank, become a mortgage loan originator on your own, then you have 120 days to convert or you can keep on doing loans, making loans while you're in the transition. It's called temporary transitional authority, either one. Post anything in the chat, you guys. I got an additional person. SAFE Act made it the responsibility of the states to use the unique identifiers in place of what? Okay, very good. Everybody got that one. That's good. You guys did really good today anyway. It's supposed to be a 4-hour like video, 9:30, 10:30, 1:30, 1 o'clock. I don't know if I'm we're closing in on some of the material. It may be a little bit longer, not too much. Question 2, which incident from 15 years ago would not automatically disqualify an applicant for getting their MLO license? Post in the chat. There's something that would not automatically disqualify this person. Goes faster. I only got one person. There we go. Here we go. Okay, I got like okay, Oscar. I'm talking to you because you didn't get it right. The answer is D, conviction of a felony assault. That's the only thing. You chose C, but C is revocation by a state of a mortgage broker. Any revocation of any professional license in any capacity will disqualify you. Okay? Any revocation by any license that you have, if you got your insurance license revoked, your drivers, whatever, that would disqualify you. But as far as conviction here, the difference in A and D is conviction of felony fraud. That had to do with taking money. You got to read through the lines. All the stuff that NMLS deals with is if somebody got money. A conviction of felony assault. Well, it's okay to beat somebody up, but don't take his wallet. That's what they're saying. Oh, well, you can assault someone, just don't take their money, and then you'll still be okay. You can still get a license. But if you assault them and you get conviction for the fraud because you took their money, you beat them up and took their wallet, then you would be disqualified. But anything having to do with conviction for money laundering, you never get it. Anything of revocation of your mortgage license from some whatever state, you won't get it. It's the only one that will not stop you from getting the license is if you were just convicted of a felony assault. Just beat somebody up. Didn't take the money. Okay. Some additional information that came in. Like I said, it's probably going to be just the 4 hours. Today, additional information and changes that you should know about that we changed in from 2021 to 2022. We changed that section 10 of the 1003 to be section 8 of the 1003, and we call it demographic information. It is still information used for the government monitoring section. The loan limits changed for FHAs regarding the communities and the counties people live. As you can see, they went extremely higher. One family properties, 647.2, two family properties, 828.7, three family properties went to 1,000,001, 650. Loans that exceeded these limits are still non-conforming or jumbo loans. Also, that DNC penalty changed, went up to 46,517, and the SAFE violation went to 31,925. Some other changes on appraisal, high price mortgage loans, thresholds changed from January. The exemption threshold for section 35 loans now increased from 27,200 to 28,005. On section 2, the loan becomes subject to section 32 requirements under the points and fees test if the points and fees payable by the borrower at or before closing is more than 5%. of the total loan amount for a loan of $22,052 in 2021, or more, or the lesser of 8%, 1,103, for a loan of less than $22,052 in 2021. This is basically talking about the thresholds for whether a loan is considered a high-priced loan or whether it's considered a high-cost loan. I kind of got them reversed on here, but anyway, Section 35 is the high-priced loans, and Section 32 are the high-cost loans. And basically, that's pretty much it. Actually, it was designed to be that for 4 hours. I'm going to stop the screen share, but I'm going to be available for you guys now for a few more minutes. And thank you guys for getting out and ask any questions. I have emails for each one of you that I will send out post-study materials, especially for people. Some of you have already taken the test, and we're just on here again because maybe you didn't pass it that time and you just wanted to hear a little bit more so you can go back and actually pass it, and that's fine. Some of you guys haven't taken it yet that are on here now, just to be ready to go out and take it. I'm still available for the one-on-one tutoring. I found that effective with some people, and then some people just still need a little bit more. I want to say this to the one person that's on here that finally got back on, maybe using your iPhone. In the future, NMLS is not going to allow you to log in unless you have a computer with a webcam. So I don't know if any of you guys are going to even need to take any more training or do any more online webinar stuff. That's just kind of a heads up. I do the one-on-one counseling and tutoring. I try to keep the price really, really reasonable because I know it's taking an arm and a leg for some people to try to get this freaking NMLS exam. So I'm going to stop the recording at this moment. So hold on here. Maybe pause. Oops.